That's it. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It is 6 p.m. at 11:26 on 11:26. Excuse me. So we should call this board meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. How about at this end today?
Dave Larson, PM Director, District 5.
Dr. Constance Pedrosa, she, her superintendent.
Carly Hoover, they, them, District 1.
Dave Crowler, she, her, district, director of District 2.
Charlie Simpson, Director of District 3.
Aiden Halleck, he's a student representative.
Lovely, thank you. And thank you to my fellow board members. Okay, welcome to all of our guests joining both in person. It's so lovely to see so many faces this evening, as well as our guests joining us online. So we'll start this evening with, as we always do, with our land acknowledgement and recognition. So we in the Tukwila School District acknowledge that the land where we teach, collaborate, learn, and play is the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish and Muckleshoot tribes. As a public school district, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of this land as we strive to work alongside the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people who have been living and working here since time immemorial. We further acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. We remember that Black and brown people who were born and died working this land against their will for generations. We also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over centuries to today of all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. As a school district leadership, we pledge to recognize and work against systems that have historically and currently enforced and create inequities among the people that we serve. Now I'd like to invite those who would like to stand and salute them.
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we'll begin by approving our agenda. If I can get a motion.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, it is approved. Next we'll move to our opportunity for public comment. There are many ways to provide public comment. One is to sign up here in person. You are also welcome to offer public comment online. You can do so by raising your hand or typing your name into the chat.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Okay, all right. So for first up for public comment here in person, you have David Pookie. Right, come on up. Welcome.
Good evening. It's been a while since I've been to a council member and I only recognize two of you up there since the last time. So it's good to get a chance to see some new faces. I've lived in the city of Tukwila for the last 12 years. Before that, I lived in the city of Seatac. I graduated from the defunct Glacier High School in 1973. So I've been in this area my whole life. Getting to be a little old now, but I'm still using the swimming pool, which I also helped to save back in 2011. I've used that pool opened in 73, a little tidbit here. It opened in 73, and before it actually opened, one of the soft opening events that happened there was a swim meet. Foster High School, Glacier High School, and Evergreen High School had a competition event there for one of the ending swim meets of the year. And I actually was there swimming for Glacier High School in that time, but I've used the pool ever since. And when it became in danger of closing because the city could no longer fund it, I worked with a group of other folks, including one of the board directors up there, to get a Parks District created for it, pass the public proposition to create a Parks District for it, and then help it recover from years of neglect. And it's good to see it. And I was just there tonight. Good to see that pool is a welcoming place for not only older adults like myself, but kids. And it's just, they're just amazing to see how much that young children, people that go to this school district are in there. And we just celebrated 50 years of being open last year. And there's a presentation that's going to be presented to you later on tonight by the pool staff. And that has to do with their sustainability and feasibility study. And that's to try and generate a plan for the next 50 years. And they're also trying to talk with you folks about extending the lease. I can see no better use for that property than to keep a swimming pool there for the kids in this area to be able to use and learn to swim, because it is a life-saving skill. You can learn to save your own life, and you can also learn to save the life of another. We employ a lot of kids that have grown up through the pool, have become lifeguards, and work part-time for us, and continue to live in the community even after they graduate until they get through their school. We have had employees there for a number of years, and it just is a step on the road to success for them, gives them some spending money, but also the opportunity to use the school system to offer more opportunities for kids. And one of those mission goals of our district, the pool district, is to make sure that we can teach kids to swim proficiently, not just swim. Some kids go to programs in other pools in other areas of the county, and they might learn to swim, at least wise paddle around. We try to teach kids to swim proficiently so that they get an opportunity to save their own life, because we're surrounded by bodies of water around here. And I don't want to ever hear that one of our local kids died in a lake or a river of a drowning. So it's just not the thing I want to see. So anyway, I would like to end this with saying that I hope you consider the opportunity to help us continue to operate the pool, keep it open, and do maybe some renovations to it so that we can better serve the community as time goes on, and as well as upkeep and repairs to keep the facility sustainable. Because, man, what we've done with that pool from where it was in 2010, it's just amazing. And to see the participation, please take the time to walk in there in the afternoon, about 4 or 5 in the afternoon, when kids are in there participating in a lot of activities that we have. Our problem is we don't have enough water for all the people that want to use it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, please.
Well, this works is too long, pass it down. So why is a board member coming to talk and public comment? Because board members end up on more than one board sometime. When I'm on the King County board for the Salvation Army, and I'm very alert to things that go on in Aquila. And something I learned that I didn't know before I joined the board is that their largest event happens in Aquila on December 17th. It's called Toys and Joys. It's going to be down at South Center in the empty building that used to be Bye Bye Baby, which is just slightly south of Marshall, if you're familiar with the area. And they will have the ability for you to sign up if you'd like to come down. They're shopping with families, some who've never bought new clothing or anything for their children or themselves before. Hundreds and hundreds of volunteers have worked, and you're seeing it underway right now with the toy fundraisers that are going on all over the place. Why can't I think of that fund drive? the Marines and everyone else are pulling together the toy drive. In time for the 17th, get all of this put out, and more hundreds of volunteers are spreading this out in different sizes of clothing and toys and some food, so that parents can come down. So, what I'll do is I'll send Deborah the information. I gave the same information last Monday to the city council. And I'm hoping that representatives from our community would like to help guide people, to where certain effects of they have on their lips are, to help them get through the shopping experience. So you can do an hour or longer if you want to, but it's a pretty exciting opportunity. I'm trying to give you a month in advance notice. I'm a little short for you, what is exactly right on for city council. And I just hope you can find it in your hearts to spend a little time with families who really could use the help, just finding things for kids. And I know we do stuff within the school, I know we do stuff within the city, but this is gigantic. And I think it's funny, a lot of us don't even know what happens in Nicola. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, is there anyone joining online, that would like to offer public comment? Okay, doesn't look like it. As a reminder, we always have the opportunity at the end of the meeting as well to provide any additional, comments that you might have. Okay, so we'll now move to our report section of the agenda, beginning with our student representatives.
Good evening, everyone. I came in a little late, but I'm the senior student representative, Alex Brewster. And for my report, I just wanted to say this past week, I surveyed people at Foster High School to prepare for a presentation I just gave this last weekend at the WASDA conference in Spokane. And the goal is to share students' perspective on challenges in public schools, like inequitable funding and lack of resources. And the specific students that I surveyed highlighted concerns like overcrowded classrooms and cuts to staff and different programs, including some of those at the Foster Library. And I also talked about our upcoming budget committee that I plan to be a part of. And yeah, Dr. Pedroza already shared the slides with you all. So if you have any questions, you can email Director Dave Larson, because I gave a presentation with him, or me. All of our contact information should be on the slide deck. And as for the student advisory board update, unfortunately, we didn't have a meeting this month because of the weather conditions and the power outage last week. But me, Naomi, and Aiden are gonna start working to reschedule the meeting for a date that works for everyone, because we already have an agenda and slides and the plan prepared. We just need to finalize a date that works for everyone. And yeah, that's what I have for today.
As some of you may have known, I have been very busy this month with the drama club, doing our first performance as a club, which went very well. But in regards to the student, representative role, I have further talks with the Foster High School ASB into further cooperation with the SSAB here. And those are going slow but well. I expect further results with cooperation in the coming week or so.
Any questions, comments from? Just want to comment on two things. I had the opportunity to attend Alex's presentation, along with, of course, Director Larson. And I just want to say just really, really fabulous job. Like, it was clear that you put so much time and attention into your presentation. I know that you were practicing so much the day before and really just getting ready, and that really showed up in the way that you were present in that space. And Aiden, I just wanted to say thank you for all of your advocacy to make sure that the drama club happened, and that it's just such an exciting milestone. Thinking about sitting across from you at that table last year at the student listening session, and so many of the just things that you were feeling, and so it's a really cool, it's really exciting to see that it's gone from that to now just putting on your first performance as the club. So, and that wouldn't happen without you and your advocacy. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next is our superintendent report.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. happy last week of November. First, I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully for our staff and students and families, you get at least some rest a little bit this weekend. Just to let you all know, the last agenda setting meeting, we decided to add a section to the superintendent report to give updates related to previous public comments, to make sure that, so previous public comments around issues around the district, to just make sure, give a status update to the community. And so that'll be titled District Business Updates. And so for this first report, I'm going to add that piece. So I have a couple items to share just for the community. I've shared with the board already, but I want to make sure the community has that information. Chickwell Elementary School fence. There was a proposal last spring from family members to build a fence. We've done some analytics, we've done some bids. We're currently researching and applying for grants and looking for grants. And we're waiting for responses or waiting to see there. So we're kind of right now in this wait space. Just wanted to let people know where we are, that there has been action behind that. We actually had a comment at the last board meeting regarding water-led analysis at Foster High School. So we've contracted with PBS to do the water testing, and once all of the documents and the schedules are finalized, they will begin in mid-December. So just want to let everyone know that's moving forward with that. And then just also there was a comment around Foster High School stadium concessions. The director researched the concerns and noted the outlets were being used over capacity, which was causing some of the outages. And so they're going to be working, the district's working on replacing some of the outdated outages and also making sure labels are clearly put onto those outlets to make sure that everyone is aware of the capacity per outlet. So that's going to be worked on right now. There was a comment around the TILF Garden Grant. It's being voted on tonight, moving forward. And then I want to give an update on racial equity work in the district. So the equity leads in schools have been meeting regularly as a team and with their principals as well. They're preparing their planning for support around their goals around anti-bias discipline practices. And they're preparing right now for various events, this Week in Solidarity in January and other events in their schools to make sure that they're showing celebration as well as highlighting work that they're doing around improvement planning for their schools. We're also submitting tonight a policy and procedure review for tonight in alignment with our racial equity work. A couple things to share with the community. These are kind of a big deal. We have a budget advisory committee that's going to be starting on December 12th. We've sent out notification, correct, Deb, already around the budget advisory to select groups to get their recommendations?
Yes.
Yes, we have. So we're trying to get various representations from various groups. And so that notification, we're waiting for that, but that will be starting in the middle of December. We will be sending more information out. We're planning a committee task force planning team, identity safety. This will be led by Director Hoover and myself. The budget advisory is me and CFO Fleming, and then Director Hoover and I will be planning an identity safety planning team. This is in response to supporting all of our families and making sure that we're creating safety plans for everyone in the community so they're safe. And those will be starting in December as well. We're going to be doing portrait of a graduate work in alignment with Foster High School revisioning, and that'll be starting in January. And last but not least, around the updates, we're going to have coffee with Concy and Carly Wednesday, December 4th at 8 a.m. at Thorndike Elementary. If we're going to have coffee for you, please come. It's going to be very cash. We sit there, we come like this, we're hanging out, we want to answer all your questions, and it's not just for Thorndike families, it's for any family. So we're just hosting it at Thorndike, and then we'll host it another time. So please come, tell your friends, come grab coffee with us. We want to have coffee with you. Trying to be like, let's go, let's do this. Okay. Just some celebrations. I want to just make sure, congratulations to the Foster High School football team. Not only did they have a fantastic season, but they also did a community service event, and they donated lots of food and hygiene packets to some of our needy families. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That was over the weekend. They were working. And they were also working at the same time as the new production, the Imaginary Invalid. And I just want to say our student rep, Aiden, was Awesome. I think you're like the star of the show or something, right? Just saying. Really, really good. I was really impressed. So anyway, so they did a really nice job and, it was really fabulous and, it was great to see you in a different way. I see you here, but then it's fun to see you up there. And then, as was reported, the board and I, as well as Alex, attended the WASDA conference, which is actually the Washington State School Directors Association meeting, where all the school directors from all over the state gather to share ideas. And I will say, not only did we have Director Larson present, but also Director Hoover presented as well. Alex presented, and then I got to present a little bit about our parent advisory committee. So we were really well represented at the conference statewide. Tukwila School District was raising the roof a little bit. And then I just want to thank all the staff, families, oh my gosh, all the power outage, your patience, thank you, thank you, thank you. Tukwila School District, we're one of the lucky districts. We only had 24 hours to deal with. Other districts were out for the whole rest of the week. In fact, Issaquah just came on Monday, so we're thanking our lucky stars. And so we'll be sending out a letter of communication, just reminding families what we need to do, because we're hoping there's not more inclement weather, but if there is, we want to make sure that everyone's prepared. So we were lucky, we're only 24 hours, but we got to be prepared in case something else happens. Here's some updating things. So people who love concerts, so take out your pen. Okay, Foster High School will host 2 concerts. December 5th will be the choir, and then the band will be December 12th. They'll both be in the PAC, 7 p.m. That's kind of easy to remember, 7 p.m. And then our superintendent student advisory board, we had to cancel November because it was on the day of the outage. It's going to be Wednesday, December 18th. And these 2 fine folks are co-leading that work on the 18th. So they'll be, they're identified academic policy and safety as their priorities. And then we had a resource fair last night at Schultz. We're kind of busy around here, just saying. I have a picture and the whole room was packed at the middle school, and I heard that people left. So that just means it was really well attended. I think we gave over 65 turkeys. People were picking up clothes and got resources. It was a really great event, and I want to thank Julie and Marianne for organizing that. It was well intended. And then upcoming Foster High School is going to be hosting, this is for everybody, on December 8th, between 3:30 to 5:30. So December 8th, they're going to have a community toy giveaway. So at Foster High School. So if you know people who are interested in participating in that, that's coming up too. So lots of things happening, and I'm sure there's gonna be more things on the website as well at some of our schools as well. So, but that's what I have. So lots of good things happening.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Thank you for that update, and that response piece to the public comment is very much appreciated. So for adding that. All right, next are our board reports. Okay, did you start over here?
So last week or last month, actually, we had a little meeting with one of the state representatives, Mia Gregerson from the 33rd district next door. And we were talking, and 2 other representatives from the 11th district, Representative Berquist and Hackney. And we were asking for a number of things. One of the things we were asking for was a bill that would allow permanent residents to serve on school boards, so that it doesn't have to be so you don't have to be a citizen necessarily, but a permanent resident. Open it up. Particularly important in our community with lots of immigrant communities here. And Mia Gregerson is going to run that bill in the House, so that's win number 1. To become a bill, to become law, you have to start with somebody, one of the legislature has to introduce the bill, and it has to go through all the committees and sign and so forth. But we got step 1 in that process, so that's a good. And already we know that One America is going to support it, which is the local immigrant rights groups, and the School Directors Association already has a position that will support it as well. So we've got a good thing to go on. The last time it came up, a bill a couple of years ago, it went through this. It didn't actually get to the floor of the Senate. It kind of died in the committees, but anyway, it's good to give it another run this year. As was mentioned, we were at the school directors annual conference and attended a couple of sessions, one which I guess we're going to end up talking about later, a good session on school improvement plans and how one district actually got board members out into the schools, to see what's going on, and, that's already kind of being planned, and we'll talk about that. So that was a really good, we talked for a while, how board members can get into schools a little bit more, so that's good. Also attended several, couple of sessions on financial reporting, to find out what other districts are kind of dealing with, all the financial difficulties that school districts are dealing with. So I'm gonna meet with, our CFO and talk a little bit about, ideas I got from there. Yeah, as far as the imaginary invalid, I saw that on Saturday night, and, that's quite a challenging. I've watched dramas productions over the years, and that one is actually, first of all, it's over 2 hours long. So it's quite long, and the two leads, which Aiden is one of them and Lily was the other one, there's a lot of dialogue. I don't know how you guys memorize all that dialogue, but you delivered it flawlessly, and it's a very interesting. It's kind of too late to go to it now, but it's very interesting. I mean, it had puns, it had slapstick comedy, it had song, dance, and it's interesting. It's a play that was originally developed in the 17th century, but yet the themes of interaction between classes, interaction between generations, looking at the criticism of the medical profession, and just all these themes which, were interesting, that were current back in the 17th century are still current today. I mean, it was updated, and they had a lot of really, in the 2011, there was somebody kind of rewrote it to make it a little more current. And there was a lot of current references, which were funny as well. So anyway, it was the other thing that was, just people may not be aware, the Congress says we have support from a local sound stage called AT Productions, which they've been supporting. I mean, we pay for their services, but they've been supporting the Drama Club for a number of years. And, I was particularly happy after years and years of kind of hard to hear the sound. We got a new sound system this year, which was really good, because I could hear everything that people were saying, which is really important, particularly in a play like this, where there's like pun after pun after pun. Yeah. And so, anyway, that's a really good, as I say, it's a really challenging thing. So they'll be doing, they even got a plug-in for their next production, The Addams Families, in the middle of this program, which is great. So, encourage everybody. The only thing I wish, hopefully we can do even more publicity. I'd like to see more people in that theater. There weren't that many on Saturday night when I was there. And so it's a high quality production, and, so anyway, good job, guys. Let's see. Oh yeah, is that city council meeting a few weeks ago with Dr. Pedrosa, plugging or advocating for the Chocolate Promise program, which they received a very favorable response from the council. They have to contribute some money to support that program, and I don't know, it's in their committees now, I guess, but anyway.
Actually, we have great news.
Okay.
I don't know if we can share it or not. But
Okay.
They just sent me a little text saying that last night, Tukwila City Council approved the 2025-2026 budget, which included funding for the very first Tukwila Promise. It was a good news.
Yeah, so this is a program, for those who don't know, that will, pretty much ensure any student that graduation from Tulsa High School and wants to take advantage of at least 2 years at Highland College, they will get their tuition paid for. Either through one of the many state programs. This is kind of the backstop program, so if they don't get through any of the state programs, of which there are many, and most students can get one of those, but if there's something that's not covered, then this will step in and do it, so. We're now keeping up with Seattle Promise has been for a while, the Renton Promise, they're starting it. So anyway, we're in good shape. And then the last thing I wanted to say was just I attended the first statewide meeting of the Equity and Education Coalition called Fundwa. This is their campaign to have an equitable funding system in the state of Washington. This is something I've been advocating for years, and this is a statewide group that's gonna start, they have a lot of membership, and they have a good amount of funding and support behind this effort. So this is the first time this is gonna be happening in the state ever. So I'm pretty jazzed about the fact that they're gonna be starting this battle. It's a 50-year effort. It's not gonna just come and die next year or something. So really happy to have that organization behind this effort, which will be hugely beneficial to this district. So that's it. Thanks.
Welcome, thank you. Any comments, questions? Great, thank you very much. So just want to say again how incredibly exciting that is, that we now have a Tukwila Promise. As Director Larson said, this is going to guarantee that any student gets to take advantage of 2 years of education at Highline. This was an effort that was really driven by Dr. Pedroza and in partnership with Representative Berquist, who worked closely with Renton to make this happen. And so I just want to commend you. You know, there's so much going on in our district, and so many things that are just requiring your constant attention, and for you to be able to hold all of that and be really thinking about the future of our district and building these things up. It's just really amazing. So thank you so much.
Well, I do want to thank too the mayor and the city council as well for taking this away. It took some efforts, and yeah, we'll see how it goes, but here we go, everybody, hang on.
Yeah. As far as other things, as Dr. Pedroza mentioned, we are having coffee with Carly and Concy next week. Next Wednesday, we had our first one at Showalter. No one came, but that's totally fine. Our hope was to just get them on, get them going, and then the people will come. If they say it, build it, and they will come. So that's what we're hoping for. We'll continue to find more opportunities to do that in different venues. Right now, we're just focusing on once a month in a school, and then we'll diversify times and locations as we continue to move forward. Again, as she said, that's just really an intention for us to just have some more casual dialogue with folks. While we can't say for 100% all of your questions will be answered, your questions will definitely be heard. And then we can make sure that we get you the answers back that you need. Not to just keep saying things that everybody else has been saying, but we all attended the WASA conference. I had the opportunity to present, and in doing so, my presentation was around supporting culture, culture belonging for trans and gender expansive youth. And so in that, have had the opportunity just to really think a lot about the ways in which we need to continue to embed policies and procedures that are really going to support all young people in our district, and more pointedly, our trans and gender expansive youth. We're talking a little bit about that in one of our policy reviews this evening around ensuring that gender expansive youth feel connected to, or have the opportunity to connect with interscholastic activities. So anyway, that's been kind of a lot of where my brain space has been. We're also, again, working on this identity task force group. And one of the things we're going to be working on now is putting together a resolution that I hope to bring to the board later in December, if not very first thing in January. Just really kind of standing firm in our commitment to ensure that the safety of students that are within our buildings. And yeah, so that's what I've been working on. It's more kind of like ongoing projects, looking ahead to future things.
Overlapping what I said before in comments, Toys for Tots, that's what I put in. Sorry, so huge, I can't believe I forgot. My experience in the last month is pretty much just going to the WASDA conference for the first time as a board member of Tacoma School District, and there were 5 kind of highlights for me. One was a keynote address during one of the general assemblies that was really broad, and yet also gave us lots of details on the different ways that different generations are motivated and what that means in our school settings and when we work with each other. And it was really both serious and also humorous to just think about how the different generations think, what makes them go, what turns them off, and then trying to blend them all. So that was exciting for me. And then I went to an onboard session on cultural proficiency, And it's called Onboard, and I found out while I was there that when you're a new school board, member, you're supposed to get 3 of these in, during your term, so I was getting my first one done through that, and was actually co-taught by, somebody from DeQuilla, which was Mary Fertakis, really in-depth, and when you do this statewide, there's a lot of political positioning, right? And people are concerned about what they're gonna be taught and what they weren't. And it was fun to finish the program because it's set up by WASDA. That people who had concerns about that they were gonna have to be spoon-fed some stuff, actually learned things and felt enlightened and not threatened, which is exactly how it's supposed to work. The second onboarding I went to, once I realized I should be motivated through these, was financial indicators that board members should be aware of and monitoring, when they're presented with financial information. And what the 5, indicators are, used to be 3, now it's 4 indicators that the state actually watches and posts online for how we're doing. We're in the middle of a binding condition with our financial situation, and it's going in a healthy path. You're not really supposed to compare to other districts, but it was interesting to see what our numbers in those indicators look like and what is behind them, and therefore the good, the bad, and the ugly behind indicators, because not all data turns out to be the best. So it's important to get it blended and understand what it means. Then the other sessions I went to was leading in tumultuous times, which I thought was really important tips on how to just kind of center what first our kids and how to find common ground with people for the good of the kids, and then just try to move forward together during times where we may not agree on every little issue. And then the last was community engagement, options, ideas, and what it was presentations on what many schools are doing, and what we heard Dr. Pedrosa say was that she got to speak up when we talked about our advisory boards, but there was a really big spectrum of ways to reach out to the community, and I was really impressed to grab that down and get the information. We'll hope to share it in other conversations that we have on the board. That's it.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. All right, so we'll now move to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is board business and discussion. And I was absent in October and know that Director Simpson did some great work with Ms. Clore in adding this particular board discussion item, board business discussion, and putting together a great spreadsheet. I'm wondering if you would take a second to talk through a little bit about the intentions of that and kind of how you envision us using that document in our meetings.
The
Is that okay?
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, the board business and discussion.
Yeah, basically, we were just kind of making sure that we're gonna go back around and have a kind of a document that we could look at to make sure that some of the things that are being brought up by different directors or also by people in the public, right, that we're following through with what we're doing. Sometimes it's been felt like things are said and then forgotten, you know, and it just kind of goes through and then it's brought up maybe on an emergency feeling. So we're hoping that this will be a way of kind of keeping accountable what's happening and who's responsible for it, and then making sure that it's reported back to us, or if we need to be the ones reporting back, that it's very aware that we're all, you know, taking part of it. So this way then, I think it kind of helps us connect the dots, I guess, was kind of the best.
Yeah. So I noticed that some of the items that are on that document are also in our agenda for tonight. So the intent that kind of we're using that as during our board, like agenda setting meetings, or that we're pulling it up here and kind of checking in about things or kind of.
I think it's a working document. We're definitely doing it in the board agenda meetings, but also if we need to circle back around, like our superintendent did today, and kind of bringing up some issues that was there before. I think that was part of it. We were kind of talking about also making sure that we're following through with what we say and that as needed. So we can look back. This will be up on the I'm hoping this will be up, you know, at all the board meetings to kind of see, and then kind of says the dates where it's at. We don't have to go through, but if there's something that needs to be brought up or the public needs to see, okay, well, you know, where is this? You know, what's going on, what's happening, type of deal.
Great. So in addition, or I guess with the exception of the two things, the board goals and board operating agreements, kind of looking at that list, is there anything that folks, would like to spend any time on?
Well, except the, I guess, the annual review.
Yeah, we need to
Okay,
get, these are the ASAP kind of, we need to take care of, we need to
Yeah,
have them on there.
Okay,
You know, special meeting to be scheduled, so we need to be able to get dates and everything down and put in there
Yeah.
that we can all
okay,
do. So we're kind of getting the, obviously, the highlights ones, and this also helps, you know, get us organized as a group here, and then give some dates, because I think sometimes we're getting tracked down and it's difficult, I think, for us, so we also need to schedule in the dates so that these are taken care of and we're in compliance.
Great. Well, we do need to work to find schedule a time to do the annual review. November, because of WASDA, is just like a really busy month, it feels like, so to add another meeting. We could look to do it in December or even at the very beginning of the new year. Do folks have a strong preference one way or the other? I see you do down there.
January is the mid-year review,
Right.
Mhm.
so. I don't know if you wanna combine it, just do it separately. I don't know exactly what.
So one of the things that we have not really, so this, I guess just a little bit of context here, from my perspective. I've been on the board now 3 years, this is the beginning of my 4th year. And this is a process that has not felt clear or strong since I got here. And some of the hopes I know that I had with Dr. Bergioza coming on is that we could really work together as a board to like design what a really comprehensive review process looks like. The one review process that I did participate in a few years ago just felt really hard and also really limiting. So I say that to say that's kind of why this has gotten pushed off a little bit. Certainly there are other ways in which we're evaluating performance, right? On a week to week and month to month basis. But I also recognize this needs to be done. And so I wonder if maybe the next step is actually having some board discussion at our meeting in December about the review process as a whole, and figuring out like, how do we want to go about designing what that looks like? I'm sorry.
Because we have our mid-review in January, right? So, and we'll use this time then to kind of, where I think what you're saying is use some, meeting time in December to figure out what the steps are. And so then we're gonna carry that in.
Yeah.
In our annual review, or we're gonna carry that into our mid-review, you
We
know what I
can
mean?
carry that into our mid-year review because we do have goals that Dr. Bergioza submitted in July of this year. So we can, whatever we set up and discuss as an approach, we can use those goals for that mid-year review in January.
Okay. And so are we gonna do that in a regular board session meeting, or are we gonna do that?
Like at a work session?
Right.
I don't know, and I'm kind of asking you what you think.
I honestly would be open to a special session to
To do that.
focus just on that, because
Okay.
I know all of our agendas are really packed.
Yeah.
I think it's an
Not that
executive
I love
session.
lots of extra.
It's an executive session to do the review. It would not be an executive session to discuss the process for review.
Talking about doing.
Correct. No, we're talking about how we design it.
So my point would be that we would just be focused on that, because we have a lot of packed agendas.
For
that we
sure.
went Through, and I just don't think we would give the proper.
Just confirming, do we have a work session and a regular meeting in December? Just one regular meeting? Okay, so maybe we can work on putting together a special meeting in December.
That'd be great.
Great. Okay, we will do that. Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else there, knowing again that we are gonna be chatting about board goals and board operating agreements? Some of those here feel less urgent. I guess maybe I'm curious about the AI presentation. Where did that kind of stem from and what are we hoping for? To ensure that whenever we get it scheduled, we have. Did that come up in October when I was down?
I think so.
I'm missing that. Where do you have that on?
It's
When I-
second or third from the bottom.
Oh, yeah,
It
yeah,
says,
yeah, okay.
Aaron and Darren Hayes, and we have a discussion on what's needed.
I think, yeah, I
For
think.
one of the two, for one or two of the included slides. So it's a technology department presentation.
We want to include in that, since this is the new.
I think the decision was not to have a separate presentation,
Right.
but since technology is gonna be coming for an annual presentation,
Yeah.
we include AI, because,
Just what is the policy?
yeah, Darren's part of the, he's the one that supported the guidance. And so, and working with teachers, so, and he's part of that department, so we thought it would be a good fit.
Super.
Okay. So I guess things like that, do they need to be on this sheet if they're not things that we need to circle back to because they're gonna come back to us in a different way?
I think that's what the dates are for at the
Okay.
top. So basically, we could just, if it was on there, it could say, next steps, we're gonna have that presentation and then data, and once it's completed,
Then we
then
can
then we
take
check it, that's
Okay.
off. Yep,
Or if it raises concerns.
Sure.
right, exactly.
Only reason I bring that, and I think if we just have to make sure that we're managing this, and I think we can, right, if we're coming back to it on a more regular basis. We did a version of this last year, a year and a half ago, that ended up just getting so long that it became unmanageable. And I think so many of the things that we were hoping to circle back to have now started to be built into the presentations that we're getting anyway. But just wanted to name that, so I want to make sure that this is staying reasonable, and we're also taking things off when they're no longer either relevant or, yeah.
I would agree, and I think that also to help the board focus on what is important
Yes,
and what we want to spend our time doing and not micromanaging some things. And so just as far as what our kind of our bigger goals are and keeping those on here. So I would agree that that's also kind of to help us keep
Yeah,
that focus when doing that.
okay, anything else on this right now? We'll jump to the policies. Okay. Okay, so we had several policies up for review, both first and second review, none of which are being voted on this evening, just making sure that's true. So we're still kind of in the review and refining process. So we can just kind of go one by one. Any kind of thoughts, discussion, things that came up for folks looking at the board policy 0100. This is a brand new policy, correct?
It's a policy that combines the racial equity policy, the family engagement policy, combined in one uniform document.
Will we then be, what happens to those other policies? Like archive them?
We suspend them and we archive.
Okay. Okay. I had a few, just little thoughts. In the first sentence of the second paragraph, well, I guess, let me, which you over there. So this is the policy 0100.
Yep. With you.
Equity and non-discrimination, the first sentence there, I wonder if we can add ensuring that all students receive equitable access to quality education. Access isn't enough, right? It needs to be high quality. I think this may be too buzzwordy and I'm okay with that. I can receive pushback, but I wonder if when we're talking about, if we can see belonging reflected some here. So I'm thinking about that. It came up for me when I was reading the building capacity for family engagement on the points down below. And I think belongingness is a really important part of feeling safe, right? And so I think for me, it would feel really beneficial like to name that somewhere somehow.
Where are you going? Just the bullet points where? I'm trying to-
Culturally inclusive school family partnerships. I'm not necessarily saying that's where it goes, but that's kind of, as I was reading through the document, that's where I was like, oh, something feels like it's missing. This, intention on belonging, because it's all through our goals, right, as well. And then the other thing, and then we can come back to any of these, but I'm wondering, so now going down a little bit to professional development and diverse staffing. It lists out some identities here, people of color, women, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and others. References to RCW. My assumption is that those identity groups are what's listed out in the RCW.
I'll have to check.
Okay.
It's whatever, 7 protected classes.
I'd love to be more explicit around LGBTQ people. And when we say, you know, we can call out, sexuality or gender, we could just say LGBT, I'm not sure what would fit and feel the best.
We're on page.
Adrian or Alex, do y'all have any thoughts on that? Not to put you on the spot.
What did you say again?
So I was talking about, thinking about wanting to be explicit about LGBTQ people, because they're not explicitly, it's not explicitly named. But just if we should like address, sexuality and gender separately, or LGBTQ as a single group.
Listen to the bottom of page 2. It's the bottom of page 2. It says professional development and diverse staffing.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Last sentence.
And so, do we remember our policies?
It will be.
It will be, okay, this is the draft, just making sure. So the very bottom of page 2, that says professional development, diverse staffing, the very bottom section.
Okay.
Do you see it?
They
Right
start-
here. Okay.
Start to list underrepresented groups. And the leading of the RCW strongly names protected classes.
But sexuality and gender are protected classes.
Yes, and
Okay, so
I
it's
think,
confusing
and
as to
others
why
must have been what substituted for it, and I have no problem with inserting it, so.
Yeah, we'll look to include that. And maybe I'll look at the RCW and see if maybe we can make sure that the language is specific, or we make it specific.
Yeah.
The RCW doesn't.
Yeah.
But it's a fairly old RCW. so-
Okay, but there's no reason we can't.
No,
No, we
Expand
can,
it, okay.
we can actually keep the RCW here and then expand it as well.
Okay.
We can reference it and then also include, we can say, we can be more, explicit as we want to be. So if you guys have thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think the more explicit, the better, you
Yeah.
know, in terms of clarity of statements and what we are actually standing for when it comes to these certain policies. I think the more explicit, the better, and the more detailed, the better.
Is there a group missing? Do you see a group missing from there? But, we
Yeah.
talked about LGBT.
Recruiting and retaining doesn't, none of that list includes people that, suffer from ageism.
Okay.
So if you can do anything about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I also feel like what Harley mentioned is important, not to kind of differentiate gender and sexuality, because those are two different things, and not just applicable to the LGBT, just to maybe avoid like too many umbrella terms and like recognize individual communities that people might be a part of, because not everyone's gonna fit under the same umbrella. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think if we're trying to limit umbrella terms, not using and others would probably be
Yeah.
a good start.
Yeah.
Yep.
No. That made it easy.
Yep, that's fine.
I also wonder, we've talked so much about professional development and the role that professional development has in all the things we're trying to do. And I wonder if that just feels, and I don't have a replacement, so I can keep thinking on it, but it almost just feels like a little weak, like we could have a stronger statement on the value that we put on professional development, and that we expect all staff to engage, like, we want to be a learning district, a learning institution, and yeah, so I'm again not sure what that looks like. I can think about some suggestions that I have, but I think it could be stronger.
I think, I can look at it.
And then one more general thing, and then a thought. So we've kind of gone back and forth, and depending on board members that we're talking at various times, we're more intentional about the language of like the using scholars, right, rather than children or young people or youth. And so I just kind of wanted to bring that up and get y'all's thoughts on, I think there's a lot of good, like, rationale around why, like, really elevating that language, can be really beneficial, for the students and scholars that are in our community. That's something that I could do a better job around, but just thinking about, like, if that's the language that we really value and want to use, I'd love to see it reflected in this policy. For instance, right there, that sentence that you see under supportive school environment advocacy, right, actively participate in their children's education. So like changing children or youth, young people, anytime that's seen to
To
scholars.
scholars, or saying each scholar should have an advocate, yeah, so, okay.
But I mean, that's assuming that's language that we want to adopt. I think, again, it
Well, it's all alignment with Foster High School, that's what the administration refers to, all students as scholars, right?
sounds like.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I like the term student scholars, that more humanizing. almost.
Yeah, for sure. I think it also like takes in some, like, takes away some of the adultism language from when you talk about like children, right? And then the last thing, just a little bit more broad, but as I was reading through this, I was like, this is some good stuff, like, what we are trying to do is really cool. And how can we be more, like, how can we get some of these policies out to families, like, in a way that is like super digestible? So one of the sessions I went to at WASDA, it was about, cell phone bans. It was a great workshop, super interested in talking about that at some point, but that's not the point. One of the things that they did to promote this new policy that they had was they created a video that the students put on, and then they posted it everywhere. So it was like a really student-centered, here's this policy that we're adopting as a district, here's what it means, here's what you can and can't do with your cell phone, and it was really cool. So I was thinking about, like, what are ways that we can get these things, this vision, right? That's what policy is, in a sense. Like, how can we get some of these vision statements out to the community? Not just as here's this PDF, read this document if you're interested, right? So yeah, just kind of wanted to put that in there and, maybe for y'all to kind of think about it a little bit. Yeah,
Can we drop back to the scholar conversation?
yeah.
And I just looked up in the dictionary what it means, the word scholar. And I don't necessarily have itchy feet about using it everywhere in our documents or not, but I also know that we're a learning institution. I want things to be, following definitions that make sense in the educational world. And so it says as a noun, a specialist in particular branch of study, especially in the humanities, a distinguished academic, such as a Hebrew scholar, or a student holding a scholarship, or a person who's highly educated or has aptitude for study. And the aptitude for study kind of covers it for me. But I'm just wondering, I think it has dignity, and I can see why it's appealing to everyone to use the word scholar. But when I start to think about a 5-year-old or 6-year-old or 7-year-old and start referring to them as scholars, it's almost adorable. But it starts to branch off from the true definition of what scholars are. And I don't want to say that we shouldn't use the word. I just want us to use the word with intention and not have some kid, at some point get to 19 years old and go, "What they call me a scholar when I was 5." So
Can I read that last bullet?
sure, that's not the only dictionary. I just Googled it quickly, so if we could just pause and look at the definition before we pull this overarching, otherwise I'm completely okay.
I mean, I would say even kindergartners are studying a specialty, right? Because they're focusing on just how to be humans in a social setting.
I'm not gonna go down the mat with you on this, I do know what it means once you hit the second level, and I don't wanna, I like the dignity of calling, junior high and high school kids scholars. But it's just because we're in educational institutions, thought I would bring up the definitions actually match. Other than that, it's just a nice way. And it's okay.
Any other thoughts here on this policy? All right, next one is 2151. So in the board director expects that, letter C, there's just one pronoun shift. It says he and she still, it should say they. I think that we need to highlight gender inclusive professional development in this policy. And I feel pretty strongly, and if we can have conversation about it, but I feel really strongly that we should have something about encouraging participation for all students regarding of gender, right? So actually call it out a little bit more specifically. In the WIAA guidance, it says, it uses language that I think is pretty good. Yeah, which is basically just that WIA encourages participation for all students regardless of their gender identity or expression. I just think it talks around gender and it talks about sex, which is fine. Sex isn't like male or female sex. But doesn't really speak to much of the nuance of gender. It says and genders one time. But I think it would be really beneficial, would probably go a long way to actually like making that statement.
Give me the line of where you're looking at. So when you're looking
I'm
on
just
here.
saying generally, it just needs to be in there somewhere.
Okay, and so, I'm sorry, you helped me, guide me to where you're taking me here, so you kind of talked a few things, so what are we talking about? As far as you like the language in the packet you have brought with you today?
What I'm saying is that this policy, as it sits right now, does
Yeah.
not specifically address inclusion of expansive genders, right? So where non-binary and or trans people might fit into interscholastic activities. And so I want to call that out a little bit more
So
clearly.
you're in the G somewhere, but this is facilities.
So okay, so we're doing another,
So it's not just about facilities, though
Correct,
that's
I
an
just saw.
important piece, yeah.
It's just like interscholastic somewhere.
So it could go, for instance, at the top in the description. So we recognize the value of program interscholastic activities and the integral part, blah, 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 whatever. The Tukwila School Board encourages all participants or participation for all students regardless of their gender identity or expression. So it could literally go there in the second sentence. It could
that's
be
fine, actually,
added.
that's
That works.
perfect, that's actually, I think that's
Okay.
good. Honestly,
Okay.
unless there's, I don't know, Larson. When you have an opinion?
No, it's fine.
And then again, we need to make sure that we have something in there around professional development, around gender expansive people. Because what I don't want ever is to adopt a policy and a procedure and then not equip our staff with the tools and actually end up causing more harm to our students.
Yeah.
So, okay. Got the notes there. Deb, do you have the notes? Yeah, got it. Thank you. Okay, language access plan.
And just to let everyone know, we also are following state law as well.
And just what's right. for
And what's
human
right,
dignity.
It's our law too.
So we on the next document?
Yeah.
Hold on to it, or-
We're good.
Okay, so we're good with that one, is where we're at.
Yeah.
Sorry, you guys are fast.
I don't have as many thoughts on this too.
But apparently we did, so.
Additional thoughts or comments here? Okay. Next is policy 6550. Any additional thoughts or questions here?
My only thinking is, 5 years seems like a long time to do a review, so, maybe we need to. What changes in 5 years? I don't know, and I don't know what the cost is on this or anything like that. It wasn't clear, so I wanna make sure that we're also mindful of that, and then who are we having that comes in and and does this review? You know, who are we asking to come in and do it? And is it the same institution that does all of these? I kind of have, I guess I kind of have a whole kind of question behind it that doesn't need to be answered this second, you know, but just cost, who's doing it, and is 5 years too long?
So a lot of these, some of them are done already, particularly by OSPI, around special education. The ESD can do some of them, and some of them, state auditor's office. The preschool programs is Department of Children, Youth and Families. So there's a variety. I mean, these are ones that are, you know, some of these are done yearly, some of them not. So there's a kind of a wide variation. I think the more interesting ones for me are the ones that aren't done by anybody currently. Like, I don't know that there's anybody who audits facilities operations. So those would be the ones I'd be more interested in, you know. This obviously is just a general one, that the details need to be worked out
Yeah, that,
by the superintendent.
yeah.
I mean, I originally did this one years ago, and I just wanted to make sure that we're having, the board can have some confidence that, you know, things are being run well. And sometimes, yeah, whether 5 years is the right number, it probably depends on what the, you know, what this, which position or which area you're talking about. And it has, I think, yeah, again, it's dynamic. It's going to be, you know, kind of a sense of maybe what needs to be looked at from time to time based on what's going on at an individual moment.
But then just
Yeah.
looking at the document, though, I don't even see dates when these occurred. So when
Right.
when you say that
Right.
this,
I mean, this
this,
is-
I'm
yeah.
assuming this has
Yeah.
been around for a little bit. There's not dates when this has been done. I'm sure some of it has been done.
Right, right.
But I think that's kind of going back to what we're talking about of taking this, looking at it, putting a date by it and seeing, I'd love to see who did this, you know,
Right.
what the report was.
Right.
You know, I think there's a lot of things here, you know,
Does
that.
anyone recall who did the last audit? Deborah?
Yes, I have notes here in the board
Perfect.
priorities. This was put on this agenda because Director Larson and Director Ruler and myself went through these policies to start minimizing the reports. This is one that was discussed. The last reports were received over 6+ years ago.
Well, for some of them.
For some, yeah.
Yes, that's what it says here.
Right.
The final notes that I had that was based on the conversation was there's to be no movement on reports until after board discussion, and there's a significant amount of cost to do these.
That's, I think, what I would be really curious about, is,
Is it like the Secretary of State does it, or do we hire an independent?
yeah, and so if we're hiring an independent entity, we're paying a lot of money for it, there might be some instances where maybe 5 years doesn't make sense, so I wonder what would be helpful before. I feel comfortable, luckily we're not voting on it, anytime, like, we're not voting on it right now, but, is to even get like an overview of here are the audits that are currently taking place on a regular basis. Here's how much they cost, here's the entity that is requesting the audit, or doing the audit. I don't know, does that seem feasible? It could either be, I feel like that could either be a board presentation or just something that you just send us in a memo.
Or just email it.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be a presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, when would you like that by?
When are we hoping to approve this policy?
There's no movement on
There's
it
no, okay.
until the board has all the information and makes the changes.
It's part of that big list of things that we
Yeah,
lots
yes.
of reports.
Okay.
And I think, Dave and I agree that audits are important, but you
For
don't
sure.
do them every year because it costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the question is there a state agency that actually conducts them, or is there in fact some kind of process all school districts follow by finding an independent consultant to do the audit? And then I'm looking over at the CFO thinking, do you have experience on this? Do you have any opinions or feelings about these things? Because we're right in the middle of a big foot tangle.
So we're audited on an annual basis by the state auditor's office that covers financial, transportation, special education, Now, they're not performance audits, they're more compliance audits.
Mhm.
So there's a difference between performance and and compliance. Performance is a lot more subjective and detailed, and it does cost a lot of money. You're usually hiring an outside CPA firm to conduct those audits. So that is something that you want to take into consideration as you're thinking about this and thinking about this list. OSPI comes in every 3 to 5 years and does a consolidated program review of our grants, so special education, food service, title, so they're in every 3 to 5 years as well. So not only do we get state audited by the state, we also get audited by OSPI.
So compliance, so make sure that we cover what we're supposed to cover, and then performance is to ensure that we're following best practices in accounting. Do any of these have to do with what I often have heard at the city, our rating with banks or the
No,
ability?
that's just financial, that's
Okay,
purely your financial audit coverage your ratings and things like that.
thank you.
And the ESP has expertise in various areas. When we first got into technology a number of years ago, we used the ESD experts in technology to kind of review how we set it up and things like that. So ESP has a fair amount of expertise in a variety of these areas, which probably could be, I mean, the cost of it is all going to depend on how you scope it, you know, and that's where the judgment comes in. If there's an area where we're concerned about it, then, you know, maybe scope it to that rather than just an open, you know, don't let a consultant come here and do anything they want. That's guaranteed to overrun the budget. But, you know, so there has to be a fair amount of judgment, you know, in the implementing this where it makes sense.
Oh, you know, am for anything that helps us do kind of a health check on what we're doing, and I'm for anything that helps us understand accounting practices of current times, and are we following the best practices? That's it.
I will commit to at least before January, I'll try to find out over the last 5 years what's been audited, because I'm gonna take, it's gonna take a
Sure.
5-year look. What's been audited, who's audited, and then if it's private, if there's any costs associated with that. So let me commit to that, because that'll help us identify what's consistently being done and then whatever's not. And then if there's a gap, how important is that for us to have that as an audit or a cost, especially considering our situation? But I will commit to getting some type of information to all of you. So prior to you discussing this next policy, at least you have it, so that you can determine what exactly you want to put into this policy.
And that sounds good, great, except we started this conversation with something's telling us we haven't had an audit in 6 years. So if you're looking at a 5-year scope, you might not find it.
Well, we actually do get audited all the time, so we just completed an audit with finance just last year.
Through the
So,
state.
yeah, through the
Okay.
state, so we actually do get audited, so somehow somehow we need to make sure that all of the communication loops are closed.
But as the CFO was saying, that this is talking about performance audits. There's a difference between
Right.
compliance audit and performance.
Yeah.
Compliance audits, we get quite a bit.
Yeah.
Performance audits is what this is about.
And that's what I think you need to we need to do an assessment, because
Yeah.
I think there's some performance audits on some of the OSPI, but not necessarily on the state stuff.
Good.
So that's the information we need to do. For example, if we find out that we've been doing lots of performance audits, but on the teaching and learning side, but not on the operational side or finance side, and that's something that we need to do, then we need to know how much that's gonna cost so that we can determine what we're gonna be planning for this, because this is giving me a directive what I need to be doing, so.
And I'm not, you know, at 5 years, you know, in my mind, if we see an area that maybe isn't performing to the levels that we would like, you know, that maybe best practices around us are different or something, that's an area you could go in and look.
Yeah, but here's my concern, and just where I want to hit it from the angle of what I'm thinking, if I'm the CFO performance, and I understand the two that are here, right? We thought the district was healthy 4 years ago. We found out too late it wasn't healthy. So even though we are getting audited, it's not showing us the right data, right? So I want to make sure that this policy that we're putting in here, that's how we're going to look at it, through that lens. That's what I'm hoping to kind of help. So I know that we're doing we're gonna have the budgetary meetings and different stuff, and I think that'll help some of this. But keeping it going outside of you know, if you have good people working, you know, it should be functioning right? If they're doing it correct, but it's the checks and balances to make
Correct.
sure that has to be greater than OSBI, it has to be
Yeah.
greater than ESD. So that we don't do that because those were taking place and we're still in a situation.
Mhm.
So I think that's the conversation that I think I want to make sure that it's looked at, and then facilities, of course, you know, that type of thing where we're at
Right.
there for stuff. So I just want to make sure that Dr. Pedroza is kind of, you know, that's the lens that we want to look at, not just that we're being audited.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because that, we could say 20 audits or whatever, but that is specific to, you know, what's already shown to, you know, have some cracks in it.
And that's why we need to do an landscape analysis to find out what's actually been done.
Right.
So-
So
And that's
then we
what
need to
it-
find the cost of that, and I
Yeah.
get it, and here we are, but we just, with what we have, where can we move forward?
So this, I just want to clarify, this policy is on pause until these other steps.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Let me make sure.
Yes. Okay, we're good to move on for now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, next is board goals. We're getting there, folks. Thank you for being so patient. And now you're just here to talk to us about the pool. Okay, board goals. Just a few quick updates. So we've been kind of on track with the stated goals, at least the one that we have fleshed out. Still kind of waiting on some action items around our goal number 2. As far as like the race and equity goals are concerned, we are kind of our next step for the third action item there is to establish a shared approach for how we like address racism that may arise like in our conversation or in a school board meeting or when we're out and about in the community. And then how we might, respond to that with, a learning and a care that we need to navigate those difficult things. And so I had on here originally to schedule a meeting with PSESD and the full board for December 2024. Because we're gonna do the special meeting in December around the evaluation component, I think we can push this maybe to our January, which is when we'll hopefully be able to be doing a retreat as well, because that sounds like a really good retreat activity. So just a quick, update on the due date of that, the sub items under action item number 3 to change that December to January 25. I do still think it's reasonable to have the first draft done by January 2025. And what this is just, again, kind of creating norms, right, for how we engage, and then replacing the courageous conversation norms that we had been using in the past. The other thing, just to kind of put it on everyone's radar, is that action step 4, similar to the anti-racist goal, was for board members trying to define like one personal growth goal related to anti-racism, due by January 2025. And I use due lightly, but I think what we can maybe do is when we come together at our January retreat, we can just kind of share what our commitments are around our own continued growth and learning around anti-racist practices. Then I know you had asked, like, you've got some other things going, and that's fine, right? So I think it's just about bringing that to the group so that I, know kind of what it is that maybe you're working on, what I'm working on, so that we can again support each other, right? Particularly as certain things might come up in the spaces that we're in together, and we can really lean on each other to make sure that we're moving forward in the direction we want to go. Yeah. That's all I have for that update on those goals.
Okay.
I'm trying, maybe we can just get together and kind of flesh out goal number 2 around the community stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
We'll do that.
I'll email.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, next is the board operating agreements. So there were kind of 2 sticking points around this being approved last time. The first one was under number 4, communication information management, the last bullet. That says all communications to, along with any responses representing the board, will immediately be shared with all board members in matters for content contains protected information, high level talking points will be supplied to all board members. The sticking point was kind of around that word immediately. It's not worth like kind of going back and forth, spending a ton of time, but can we agree to as soon as possible? That was your other
Yeah, I think it's
recommendation?
fine, yeah.
Okay, so we'll change the word immediately to as soon as possible. The other thing,
And just,
Oh, yeah.
the point in mind is that if you're representing us, not you, the position is representing the whole board, and you issue a communication, we should know what that was
Mhm.
as soon as possible.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean you have to immediately or as soon as possible respond to that constituent, right? So, that's what I'm trying to take the foot off the pedal on, but I also don't want to be 3 meetings later and you've had a communication with somebody in the community and none of us have known about it for a month and a half.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to address.
thank you.
Okay.
So we'll update that language. The second thing is, and I don't know if this is necessarily a sticking point, so, but just to confirm, if we can remove, under, number 3, the bullet point around courageous conversations, if we can just remove that whole thing, because we're no longer gonna be using courageous conversations.
We're not gonna be doing this.
We're gonna be courageous,
Kidding.
but we're not gonna use that particular framework right now. And who knows, we may decide to come back to it, but right now I wanna make sure that we decide together, what that means. So if we remove that, and then the other pieces, I wanted to make sure that we had something related to anti-racism in here, and so for kind of simplicity's sake, though, I want, you know, in the future, again, this is a document that technically is constantly evolving or changing, right? And every year, in theory, should be reviewed and updated. So for the purposes of like getting it approved, if we can just under continuous improvement, lifelong learning, just add a bullet about, committing to, focus on our shared anti-racist, board goal.
That sounds good.
And any other thoughts?
Can you repeat that?
Something like, we'll commit to, working towards our board anti-racist goal.
Okay, thank you.
And then I think we can get these back on the action items next meeting.
Yep.
All right, whew, we made it through. Cool. All right, did y'all have any other thoughts about the board operating meetings? Technically.
And we're gonna wait till next time to vote on them, because you want that written into.
Yeah. I was curious about these things too.
Well, yeah, this popped up right now as I was looking at the ethical conduct one. I see at the end of it, like we refer to the ethical conduct policy. I was thinking maybe we can do something similar with the anti-racist idea that you just brought up. Maybe refer to the statement or a tentative anti-racism policy possibly. Just
Yes, actually, let's add another bullet point under accountability around, we commit as a board to, something around the anti-racist policy.
yeah, okay,
Does that work?
if that works.
Okay,
That's everything.
I can have you wordsmith, offline.
So we're moving it from continuous improvement?
No, we're keeping that there. That's about our board goal.
Okay.
And then the accountability is about essentially like being accountable to our anti-racist statement and anti-racist policy.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. I got another thing that just kind of came to mind, make sure it's not here already. So technically our student representatives don't vote, right? However, like I know and I know other board members have been this way as well, like always kind of like check like where you're at, right? I know sometimes like last year I would say, hey Dennis, how would you have voted on this, or how would you vote, depending, you know, if you could. And so I wonder if there could be something in here too about while a student representative doesn't hold a legal vote, like we are having y'all vote or we're getting your voting perspective prior to making a formal vote of our own.
An advisory vote.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think that's in our student representative policy.
okay.
Do you want it in this? too?
Let's add it in here, so it's a little bit more concrete and we have to, maybe it's more, in our face, I guess.
Yeah, because at the conference, I remember a lot of other districts with student representatives, they had an advisory vote. And like something that just reminded me of, I remember as we were planning for, what was it? The superintendent student advisory board meeting, we were thinking of looking at agenda items possibly and like looking at how students like think of it or like how they would vote on it. So maybe it could also expand beyond just this and also the student advisory board, but that's just an idea to put out there for now, just an
Yeah,
explicit approval to the document.
okay. Let's keep this one specific to like the student representatives who are here, because
Yeah.
this is again, like how we are functioning as a board in this
Yeah.
space mostly.
Yeah.
But I do think that, to your point, there's somewhere where that could go.
Yeah.
About like the role of the student advisory committee in our collective work.
Oh, yeah, I understand that, like I said,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to like about the student advisory, but it's just
Yeah.
something to put out there, just.
And I'm just gonna poke the bear a little bit. We're not saying our accountability is that we're gonna get an advisory vote from these two every time we vote. What we're saying is we're gonna create space for them to weigh in on how they feel about what we're about to vote on, correct?
I mean,
I don't know if there's anything in any of our, I want to check the laws on whether there's an advisory vote within a meeting, that's why.
I think we can do it. It just doesn't count towards the vote of the board.
But is it in fact called an advisory vote officially inside of an official meeting? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, lots of districts do it, just when you come up for a vote, the first thing you do, make the motion, students say what they think, and then go on.
So it's
to the
just part of
vote, blah, blah, blah.
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
as opposed to an actual
Yeah.
weighted vote from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to be careful.
I mean, the weight comes from the weight we put on it,
If we
right?
changed all the laws and said these guys could vote with the same amount of votes that we'd had, whether they're elected or not, I would have no personal beef against it, but I don't want to do anything that.
Yeah,
keeps saying
I
it's against state law.
don't think we would have any issue with calling it an advisory vote. But we'll confirm to make sure before we put it in the document. Okay, great. Anything else? Sweet. All right. Thank you all so much for your patience. We're now going to move to our presentation, which is starting with the amazing Tukwila Pool folks that are here. So y'all can literally all pull up your chairs to the table if you want. You can rotate in, like whatever is gonna feel good to you all. But thanks for being here. I'm just excited to hear from you.
And we can add chairs.
No, it's just us.
Well, wait, it's different tones.
It's all of us.
Yeah.
So if you did it right, you are.
Thank you, and thank you for making space for us. My name is Brad, I'm the executive director for the Tukwila Pool. Joined by,
I'm Vanessa Zaptel, I'm one of the commissioners at the Tukwila Pool. I was involved back at the very beginning when the park district was created with board member Kriller over there. We have Dave Cookie, who was here, one of our original members too, of the group that started the proposition. Andrew Stella is our board president this year. Aaron Shipman, another one of our commissioners. Di back there, Di Myers, one of the original people, and our TPAC member, our Tukwila Pool Advisory Committee member. And Jerry, another one of our original people back in 2010, and one of our commissioners. And we have Ellen Gagler, one of our commissioners, who is online tonight. So just a quick introductions to let you know who all is here.
thank you, Vanessa. A little bit about us, and Dave said it well, because I passed it up to Vanessa and I thought Dave was giving our entire presentation. So we'll wrap it up and then we'll give it back to Dave in a second, but Tukwila Pool's been around a long time. Just gonna cut to it, 1973, doors opened, has been serving the Tukwila community for 50, almost 51 years now. Through the years, Tukwila has kind of seen its life cycle change depending on ownership. King County owned the pool, transferred it to the city of Tukwila, and then the creation of the Metropolitan Park District in I believe it's 12, or 2011, actually, Metropolitan Park District. And so over the 51 years, what we've seen is the pool ebb and flow with programmatic needs, use, water safety curriculum, and just general community programming. And what brings us here today is in 2023, we commissioned a feasibility study because of our current constraints on our facility. And based on those constraints, you can skip slides, sorry. Based on our current constraints, we commissioned a feasibility study with the aid of a $100,000 grant from the King County Parks Levy Fund, specifically the bucket of money for pools, which $44 million was set aside for aquatics facilities here in King County. So that money has helped us with our feasibility study. Through that process, what we found is we have very limited water based on the population we serve. And that's true in the sense of the minute we open to the minute we close. So based on that, who we currently serve are students, our community as a whole, Tukwila residents and families, and our swim lessons and water safety programs is where I would say our biggest programmatic needs are. Our recreational and fitness aquatic programs, which is our aging population, high school swim teams, our own internal swim clubs and swim teams, and our general business use, which is our rental groups. And our rental groups aren't in the sense of your traditional rental groups. These are aquatics-based organizations looking for training opportunities, whether that's the Coast Guard, vessel safety programs, open water, fire departments, all make up this specialized rental groups around aquatics. Our community-based programs fall within our scholarship programs, our high school physical education programs, where we've done some work over the years, our community certification programs, employment, and lifeguard. Obviously, we're an aquatics facility. Our lifeguard program is one of our most prominent programs that support employment here locally. We can move slides there. So with how we serve our community, again, it goes back to our constraints. Current facility space limitations is what we continuously hear from our community. Our community over the years have told us they're one, and I'll just be as transparent, frustrated. We can't get into water safety programs. We can't continue our water safety program progression because there's not enough space to serve all those who wish to participate. So based on the amount of water we have, right, our constraint is super limited based on the amount of hours in a day. We're utilized beyond our capacity throughout our business day, and that includes our after-school hours, which is predominantly our family swims and our student swims, high school swim teams. And then the third piece is based on our current facility constraints, everything starts to culminate into an aging facility, 50, 51 years old. During the creation of the TPMPD, we did go through about a $2.5 million renovation, systems, upgrades, pool liners, things like that to prolong the facility's life cycle. And then our last piece there, and you can say here, Greg, that's fine. Our last piece here is we continuously essentially put up the roadblocks to our growing aquatic need in terms of those who ask for the ability to participate or to use the facility at large. So we are turning away our biggest customer base, which is the Tukwila community, as well as our other high school swim programs and swim teams. So that leads us to where we're going. So vision in the future, where we're headed is the feasibility study. So throughout the feasibility study, we've asked our partners who conducted this study to look at a number of things, and those things led with community voice. What we continuously heard, you guys need more water and you need warm water. We also heard that we need updated locker rooms, modern locker rooms that allow for families to feel comfortable in those spaces. That is one of our biggest challenges outside of our lack of water accessibility is our locker rooms and for the lack of modern locker rooms that accommodate all people that use the facility. Multi-purpose spaces, staff support spaces, but the bigger three or the bigger items is again, the multiple water, warm water, and locker rooms are the three areas we continuously focus on and we continuously hear feedback on. So throughout that feasibility study, these are the top 4 things that we've identified, landed on, that again, shape kind of what we envision could take place or would be great to take place on our current site. Our current site was identified as a preferred site out of a number of sites that was looked into by our consulting group. It continued to come back to the current site where the Tuckwell Pool sits between Showalter Middle School and Foster High School remains our preferred site. Again, due to its location, proximity to our students, and who and how we serve on a regular basis. So you can move that. So through that, and again, I'm trying to keep it short and brief, through that, informed by input is what is next. We continue to meet as we are here. We have an opportunity to meet with the Parks Commission. We're continuing to make the rounds. We'll also be meeting with City Council. And again, more to inform all of Tukwila, not just our day-to-day users or those that walk through the door. This is a community asset, and it's a community asset that we'd like to see remain in the sense of an aquatics facility, specifically serving that critical need of water safety, as well as the health and wellness aspects of all of Tukwila's desire to participate. So the study continues to guide us. Our discussions and ongoing discussions within the community continue to also inform and guide us in terms of what would be appropriate as we envision the future and or what could be possible on, again, our desire and our need to be the preferred site. Our completed aquatics feasibility study was in 2023. And this is what is essentially put in front of everybody. We'll share it with everybody. We're completely open to questions. If anyone has any questions, when and if they have the opportunity to dig into the full report. But at the end of the day, our greatest need is to start looking at the facility and how the facility is essentially aging and or ending its useful life. And making the determination how much do you spend to maintain current infrastructure, or do you start looking at what the future can do for us in terms of space to adequately serve our programmatic needs. So we can skip slides down. So through that, back up one more. There we go, concepts. So through that, I know there was a number of us, so Dave, Dr. Pedroza, Director Hoover, I believe we all met about a year ago, so we had an opportunity. Nothing's really changed regarding our concept and or the potential footprint of what we're envisioning in the current space. Based on the feedback we've heard, based on kind of envisioning around programming, not the desire to have a new facility, but building a facility around the programming wants of the community and the programming wants of those that continuously use the facility is how we come up with our concepts. And remember, this concept is more about driving discussion rather than this is the footprint that we're exploring. So we can skip ahead one here. Oh. Key concepts, we discussed 3 opportunities when we met with our partners. One of our goals was just a renovation. How do we renovate and continue to make sure that the current facility is sustainable for years to come? 2 is our renovation and expansion opportunity, and that is increasing the footprint beyond the current facility to essentially get to a point where it allows us to program more and or to serve appropriately, and that includes the locker rooms, additional water spaces, so on and so forth. 3 is a new facility was also envisioned on the site. Is what would it look like to tear down the existing facility and just raise a brand new facility? And so those are the 3 concepts. We continuously land on option number 2. And option number 2 is that renovation and expansion option, using part of the current infrastructure and then adding on to the existing building to get at least enough water to allow us to meet the needs of eliminating our wait lists, overflow, and not turning away one community group because other programs are taking precedent. And so that drives some of what supports our decision to continue to pursue renovation and expansion. The ultimate goal is everybody that walks in the door should have an opportunity to participate regardless of the hour of the day. So if high school swim teams are dominating the water, we still want to be able to serve our swim lesson programs. If our swim lesson programs are in the water, we still want to be able to serve our aging population, our recreational swimmers, and those that just truly just want to use the facility and or play. And so again, renovation and expansion continues to be our preferred option. We can skip ahead.
But just real quick, most of the expansion is towards the east.
Most of the, it would be, again, if this was the footprint, yes, to the east and then a little to the west. Because we would envision a bump out.
And the south. In offices.
Oh, good point. And the south. So all directions, all the current footprint.
Okay.
But the biggest expansion would be to the east side.
Okay.
That's where we would envision in that area. Leading up to the football field and that green space outside our back doors, where we envision a warm water facility for all our beginner level therapeutic water aerobic programs. That just kind of squares out the building there. So this footprint allows us to envision what would multiple water spaces look like, as well as modern locker rooms, support spaces, and then multi-purpose room for community gatherings, meetings, and then up front, the brown blob would be kind of envisioned splash pad. We recognize not everybody swims in the community, and we recognize the community we serve also most likely did not have access to water-based or recreational-based programming in their country. So coming to Tukwila as a new resident, as opposed to turning families away, the splash pad serves the opportunity to allow people to still play without standing water. So the moms and dads don't have to go, I can't swim either. So we turn you away. That would help us eliminate the opportunity or increase the opportunity for play and water exploration, as well as serves as a cooling center in our neighborhood, especially as our summers are starting to get warmer and longer. And so looking at this is, again, this type of concept will allow us to serve the overall community, our water safety programming, and meet the general needs of our aquatic-based folks. Next steps is essentially where we're at engagement. We're essentially making the rounds. We're continuously receiving feedback. We're continuously trying to find creative ways to engage our community as well as collect the input in terms of what community wants as we continue to refine this desire to re-envision what the Tukwila Pool means and what it could look like as we continue to serve beyond our years. Review and refine our feasibility study continues to take place as we continue to engage with our consultant groups and our ongoing partners. And then brings us here today, our long-term lease. We have opportunities that are fast approaching in the new year, centered around funding, grant monies. We have an opportunity again with the same fund as one option to put in a request for a significant award towards future development and the ongoing feasibility process of the facility. And so part of that grant, we look at our long-term lease in order to make a significant investment, especially through grant money. our grant partners are looking to ensure that you have stability on your current site or a site that you potentially will be developing on. And we'll get into that in a moment, but that long-term lease is where we're at today. And then we continue to identify and look at all funding strategies, not just the one grant, but many grants as well as private partners and our own constituents in terms of the city or the Tukwila residents. So that is where we are currently at. Here in a minute, I'm actually going to turn it over to Vanessa for the long-term lease discussion. Vanessa's put in a lot of work on this area. So Vanessa, I look at as our expert in this area. And so our goal today is to essentially share where our needs are, but also just highlight the importance of what that next step looks like, and then how do we progress beyond that.
So good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. And one thing before I jump right into this, I really want to make sure everyone understands that warm water is not a want. It's a need. It statistically is true that kids learn better to swim in warmer water. If the water's cold, and unfortunately we have to keep it cooler because of our swim teams, the kids do not learn to swim at the same rate or with the same success rate as communities that are more affluent and have warmer water pools. So we are trying to level that and become more equitable. So I just want a lot of people talk about warm water and think it's a want, but it's an absolute need for our community. So moving right on the not so fun stuff. Brad gets to talk about all the fun stuff. I get to talk about the lease and so the history is why now? So there's 6 years remaining on our current lease, and the history behind that lease is the original one was set up with King County. This, as you probably have heard or know, is that the pool was intentionally placed on school district property by King County as part of the Ford Thrust Bond. So they did a 40-year lease for that initially. Then the city took it over. And the MPD was created a little bit later. There was a 20-year extension to that original 40-year lease. So we're at, 50 whatever years now, and there's only 6 years remaining, but we don't have that useful life left of our facility. So there, as Brad was mentioning, we have some opportunity for that King County Park Levy grant, where we are very well positioned to apply for $5 million next year. And this is the last year of that grant money. And the intention of that grant money is to be directed towards underserved communities. Just some quick background. The other entities that have been successful in being awarded are Covington, Mercer Island, the Lake Washington School District. So we feel very confident in our ability to appeal to King County on this. There is the 50-year lease. The reason we're asking for a 50-year extension of the lease or expansion option to extend is because to put the kind of investment that we're talking in the tens of millions of dollars, we also need to make sure that we're here, that building will be here for the future. So it's a stability piece. And it's actually required by King County. For the grant, they will not entertain it if we don't have an extension option or some kind of long-term lease in place. So that's why it's critical to us. So if we're gonna just jump to the next page. So how does the TPMPD impact the school district? Well, we like to think very positively. So the expansion I'm going backwards. Yeah, I'm going to
Can you
relationship.
jump up one? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
wrong way. Sorry, I went to the wrong one. One more.
One more.
Yeah, thanks. So this is our relationship, really important. We are really proud of our relationship we have with the school district. It's, we consider you to be extremely important stakeholders and partners. This is just some data for you, like the water safety in the Tukwila Elementary Schools that our staff do. Approximately 315 students between 2022, 2024. Tukwila residents in swim lessons, approximately 4,636 students in that same time frame. The CTE certification, the first aid CPR classes, approximately 180 students. The non-certification was approximately 70 students. Foster, now this is really, we're really proud of this next one. Foster high school student employees. Currently, 40% of our employees are Foster high school. And I'm going to quickly just highlight an example of the success of our partnership. Our current aquatics program manager graduated from Foster High School just a couple of years ago, Anastasia. She was a Running Start student. She was head of the swim team. She just graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in accounting. And she is our aquatics program manager. It's a success story of our partnership, and that's what we envision as continuing in the future and giving those opportunities to our youth in our facility. And then just other programs, obviously our key programs we do in the schools, the Foster Bulldog swim teams, we're a fitness provider for the district staff. So we want to maintain this really strong relationship. It's really important to us and we'd like to maintain it. So Deb, can you go jump back into So the biggest question is, what does the lease extension look like for the school district? And so to be really clear, the expansion option that we have provided the language for will only be activated if the school district approves a future plan. It's not approving anything right now. It's if we present a plan to the school district approves it, then we get an extension for 50 years. The second piece is that the future development will remain within the boundary of the current parcel. So the parcel goes from the stadium fence to just the first part of the parking lot out to 144th to our dumpsters in the back. So that's actually a separate parcel. It was separated out initially, probably King County intentionally did that. But all options, actually all three options, everything we're looking at would be housed within that parcel. So it wouldn't expand beyond what we're currently leasing in our current lease. And finally, the renovation expansion would not place any financial responsibility on the school district. This expansion is all the Tukwila Metropolitan Park District. It would just be that it guarantees us a future in that community. So we can just jump the whole thing. No, actually, towards the end, the other way.
Pretty big.
It's the key reason for action.
Yeah.
So this is the big deal is in January 2025 is when we have to do our grant proposal for King County. So that's why there is a time frame that's important to us. And it's very important to our community that we can at least try and honestly and authentically for that $5 million. Once again, really well positioned. So we do have some timelines here that we're asking for. It's the ongoing repairs are not a long-term solution. That's just the honest truth. That building as it is not going to continue for very much longer the way it is. So we have to do something, but that lease is very important. It's not just this grant that requires a long-term lease, other grants do too, but the time is important for this. The Tukwila pool, will require expansion for replacement in the coming years. So I think that's everything regarding the lease. And we respectfully ask for the consideration.
Can you help me understand a little bit more of the, when you said that the expansion option will only be activated if the school district approves a future development plan. So what the ask is right now, and if this is too simplified, please correct me. The ask is now that we move forward with the lease extension with the caveat that y'all are gonna still come back and provide a proposal for improvement. And then if we accept that proposal, the lease, long-term lease goes into effect.
Yeah, so what the amendment to it that we're proposing is pretty much that. It's just we're amending so that if that is, you know, we will have the option to expand the premise of the current facility. So the school district will have 2 months to review the expansion proposal and either A, accept the expansion proposal as submitted and grant the option, or B, decline the expansion option and deny or proposal and deny the option. So it does, the 50-year extension option does not get activated until the school board says, yes, we're okay with the plan. So this just puts into the lease option to extend.
And that's what you need to be able to
Yes.
apply for the grant.
Yes, so there's,
Okay.
and that just gives that 50-year option, and it's a long-term option.
Okay.
So to me, what we're writing here is a contract for 50 years with off ramps. If you don't get the grant.
Right.
It's
We-
an off ramp.
Yes,
If you get the grant and you get to your proposals and we can't come to an agreement on what the expansion looks like, there's another off ramp.
yeah, I wouldn't say the first thing you said is necessarily an off-ramp because there could be another grant. So this is, the only off-ramp here is that either we present a plan to you,
Right.
and you say, no, we don't like it. That would be the off-ramp.
Okay.
If we don't ever present a plan, this option never gets, enacted. It just sits there in the lease.
Which would that mean that there's still the 6 years remaining of the lease would stay in effect?
Currently, right now, yeah, so after 6 years, that lease is done. If nothing is presented or agreed upon.
So although this is contractual, basically it's a letter to commit on our side, if you can get everything else buttoned up. And otherwise, we're just back to what we were.
Yeah, it remains as is for now, until the point that we come and say, hey, we've got the pretty plans. So, yeah, so there's no commitment on behalf of TSD, other than that.
So so the district attorneys have not reviewed this lease.
They have, in
Their district, but
The
not
our-
No, our district.
has our district attorneys reviewed the lease?
They've done an initial.
Okay, I guess the only question I have is related to the rescinding of section 2.2, which is the right to recapture. My understanding that school districts can't lease land without some kind of a right to recapture. I mean, what you're proposing, it would be after 50 years. But there would still be a right to recapture, and if you rescinded 2.2, the right to recapture is totally gone. Which I don't think is what we would want to do.
Yeah, we'll have to know that.
Okay, so our attorneys have done a full review of that, but yeah,
The general intent being that it's a lease, and at some point leases end, and we ultimately are the primary property.
right,
Is that your point?
right.
And you want to make sure that's in there. That makes sense.
Yeah, which is, I think, my understanding is actually
Yeah.
required by school districts.
It should be a part of
Because
it.
otherwise, we would just be like giving away the land.
Yeah.
Because looking at your other leases, digging into other leases and records, yes, that section is a section that is missing that will need to come back.
Yeah. And, it makes sense to me, the 50 years and, because you're gonna build it and you want it for 50 years and so forth and so on. I guess the other question that's still the big ongoing, sticking point is the parking situation. And I think, presumably that's something that, obviously this isn't gonna get built tomorrow. We're a few years off, assuming everything goes well. But I really would like to make sure that we, as together, together with the city, with the school district, with the school district, work on the parking situation because, if you put in a new facility, hopefully there's gonna be more demand for it. If we we have, an idea to do some remodels on our Performing Arts Center, and hopefully that will bring some more, and so, and we know we have parking issues up there now, and so if we can be thinking about that with the city, I mean, there's a variety of, I talked about that, I mean, there's a variety of different options floating around. But I think we need to, during this period, I mean, I don't think it prevents from signing this, but we need to really be working on how to resolve the parking situation. And even actually both in the short term and the long term, because I know there's an issue of flexibility and, there's different options and how do they get, utilized if you need something for one weekend and we need something all of a sudden within the same weekend and blah, 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 blah. So that's a little sticky wicket that I hope that we can resolve, but we're kind of all need to come together on it.
No, Dave, thank you for bringing that up. We actually broke the parking separate. We did 2 separate amendments. And knowing that this was the most important thing, the parking is something that as partners, we can collaborate. And now we've got some ideas. We've been talking to Amy and Concy in meetings on how we can maybe creatively use, there's actually over 430 spots between all the parking lots around here, including the technology building, is that the correct name? Service Center. So between all of it, I think I'm hopeful that we can all work together regarding that.
But even in the longer run, probably need more than that, which is why, it would be nice, and I don't know who should go down to the city and say, how do you get involved in this? I mean, there's spots, the church is a spot, the fire station is a spot, and, but all that requires various zoning and all kinds of things, and so. But that can be a longer term view of it, but I think we should be listening, and also just, non-car access to the play, public transportation expansions, I mean, all that stuff. We should be kind of thinking about now.
And absolutely, we've had those conversations about, we're becoming a more urban society, and with transportation, we're gonna think more urban. And so those are all great conversations that we're looking forward to continuing.
Well, I would just say the parking issues in the future is a nice problem to have, right? We'll have overcapacity and have to make solutions come up there, but the key here is they need a go, no go decision to get them through January to even qualify to ask for the grant. And they still don't necessarily get the grant, so.
Right.
My thing is, why don't we cut them loose to get to that step, and then we'll worry about the other issues later, and I agree, the city has to do more. We're getting that the city owns that whole nursery over there as well.
Yeah.
There's so much potential in the
Yeah.
area. We own land that we charge the city for down in Foster Park. So there's just whole conversations that can happen.
And I think that's that next step is, should the grant be awarded, that allows the district, as in the Tuckahoe Pool district, to start exploring design, property, infrastructure. What does it really look like on a site of that size? And then based on the size of the facility, what is the impact to the facility in terms of the customer base, right? Then it translates into the increased demand on parking. And I think that's where we're trying to get to, is what is that next step? So should that grant get awarded, those are all those pieces that we're gonna be able to dig into to come back to the table with a more comprehensive plan that says, yes, this is actually feasible, right? Or no, this isn't. And then we pull the plug on our own project and then start re-envisioning something different, right? And so, or we identify that there's a greater need and or a want for a facility that may not work on the site. So there's a lot of angles there, but regarding parking, I think that would be that next step based on the scope and the size of the future facility on the footprint.
And then I had a first thought on Joe Camacho and his ever expanding gardening projects. Because he keeps getting grants and doing well there too, but he's never had any of the drawing that I've seen that expands into the leased property.
Yeah.
And says it remain on their footprint, that should not be an issue.
Yeah, we discussed it last year when Tilk came and presented. And it came up as a question, so we looked into it, and so we did not see the larger expansion of the garden does not conflict with this. That's my understanding from what I recall.
That's
From
it.
last year.
Yeah, same.
So
But
that's,
it doesn't conflict.
yeah, so that's a good relief.
Yeah, we have to check.
So just to kind of, for timing purposes, so, we're not scheduled to vote on this today. Our next meeting is on December 10th. Does that feel, if we vote on it at that meeting, does that feel like it gives y'all the time you need to really get the grant application components together?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then others and theirs all agree on whatever we want to add. you
Yeah.
know, to this.
There's-
Yeah, that'll give us the time to
That works
do
good.
that. Okay. Great.
Yeah, and then I'd be happy as long as our attorneys get it all, and, I mean, obviously, it's a great community asset, so.
Yeah.
Thank you, we need to figure out how to make it work. So,
Congratulations on a really nice presentation. A lot of,
Appreciate that.
a lot of
Thank
good
you.
history together.
Thank you all.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much. Don't worry, no one will be offended if y'all.
We volunteer for the usual stuff.
We've seen it before.
Thank you all so much for being here. All right, thanks.
Oh, and thank you to the Key Club. They volunteered at our pumpkin punch. We really appreciated that.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything we do with the temperature?
You just jump in, you're ready to go.
We can see in the temperature, hey, Aaron, can you put your temperature here and see if it's there? I think you want to up or down.
It's up like 20 degrees.
Something, I don't know what it is.
It's cold.
Well, it's because our batteries are glass. That's why. I think.
Thank you.
All right, I know that this one is a meaty board meeting, and you're coming in, it was gonna last a while, thank you all for hanging in, it's all really good, important stuff. All right, Dr. Pedrosa.
Yeah.
I'm gonna present on some strategic plan history.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna get it short, it's gonna be short, it's not gonna be too long. I presented on this last year, actually, and so last fall. So it's a good time to revisit as we have new board members, new community members, just kind of share some thoughts. And then also, we've also just wanted to highlight some of the changes we made based on the last conversation quickly. And then Director Larson and I have been talking about some additional changes, but we want to make sure the full board has a discussion on those items. So I will leave that at that point, but this will be very brief. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I've been part of many strategic planning discussions in my life, even here in Tukwila, actually. I interned here in 2014. So I'll even start there. I was here when they had an outside consultant from California come here, and I was part of those meetings. I think, Dave, that's when I met you, actually, right? I met him there. My gosh, I feel ancient now. And they had a convening where they came together, brought some folks together, and came up with this strategic plan that usually they last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. That's just sort of typical. And in front of you, what I have here is the plans from previous years. And they all were done with consultants. So, and I'll just give you an estimation of how much sometimes these consultant fees are anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000. Sometimes when they hire these consultants to come do some of this, or sometimes it can be less, 50,000, depending on the type of consultant. But sometimes I saw bills for some of these were pretty high. The Stuckey group was pretty high, it was a pretty high bill. So, not to say good, bad, or indifferent, but when you bring in outside consultants, they interview people, they talk to people, they have sort of a template that they work from, and then they put it together, and there we go. So here's the past two that were part of here, the 2017, 2020, you can't see it highlighted there, but that's one student at a time, which was developed from the board for 3 years back with one group, and then the Stuckey group developed the 2018 and 2022 plan. I will say for this current one model that we had, I'm just gonna go to the next one. When I came on board, and I shared this before, and I'm gonna be a little bit more direct. So there was another outside group, I think it was the CEE
Yep.
group that worked on they already had a contract with here for some amount of money. And they did some recommendations and they provided a plan. And then I'm gonna share with you, this is literally what happened. Aaron can raise his hand, who was here, I think a few folks that were here. So I looked at the plan, it was on the board, I saw it, it was fleshed up a little bit. And I had my first meeting, it was July 10th, was my first day of work. I remember this like it was yesterday. It was my first day of work. And I come to my first meeting with my team. And I put this strategic plan in front of them that was developed by this outside group. And everyone looked at me like I was crazy because they'd never seen it before, ever. And I thought, wow. So I just want to share that because I had never experienced that before. And so I went back to the president and I went back to talk to the team and go, okay, so let me find out what happened. So I did find out based on previous data that staff provided feedback on some of this is the previous year, because I came in for the 23-24 year. So this was strategic plan feedback that happened according to the groups that staff provided feedback on the importance of each of the identified areas on the draft plan. Students were provided feedback, and then small cabinet. Then we decided as a team, I decided, because I heard over and over again in my first board meeting that it didn't feel Tukwila, and I would agree too that even some of the metrics listed did not feel like Tukwila was even part of it. So as a first round draft, this was last year when I came on board. So this is the next step going into the next year. And I also had to deal with the fact that we also had 4 of our 5 schools in school improvement with OSPI. So we were looking also at OSPI and clarifying their continuous improvement expectations. And so our goal, when I came on board in July and after consulting with the board and board president and looking at the feedback and looking at the plan, we decided in July, and I think I almost killed all of you, lovingly made you work your tails off. It was a lot of meetings we had where we all summer long decided we were going to change this and not hire another consultant and use our educated folks and use some of the documents as basis, and some of the feedback as a basis, but really develop the plan. We vetted it then in front of the principals, we brought it back to the board, and we went on and on for a little bit. And then in the fall is what the plan from last year was developed out of that. It took a lot of changes. We decided to not have as many metrics. And then the next goal was to align everything. The goal of the strategic plan was to align everything to school improvement plan. So that was the first step for like foundation. So I would call last year is a foundation year for the plan. So I just wanted to share all the background, like what's happened in the past. I'm glad we did not spend any more money on the plan because we found out a month later that we weren't in the position to do that. And I also feel that the plan is more reflective of us as a community. Is it perfect? No. So that's the whole part about continuous improvement. It is not perfect. And it's our goal to always work through those pieces. So I just wanted to share like the history from when I came on board last year. My first day was July 10th. Worked all summer, worked with our teams to develop something that got in front of the board in the fall so that we could pass and say, let's start here. A big aha for me when I looked at the plan, and this was the big shocker, there was no goals for high school. Not one goal for high school was in that plan. And I'm like, how can you have a K-12 plan and no goals for high school? So that was number 1. And there was also not a really strong emphasis on anti-racism. So we just started to put that. The goal was very low level goal. We knew that had to get revamped. So I'm just going to share that that was our foundation to lay out the plan for this year. And what we're looking to do now is based on all our learning from last year, revamp that. And so that was the product that we had. We went through this process again. I heard from you, Deb, can you go here to the next piece? And so this PDF did not line it up, but then you can go back to this slide right here. This just those 3 little that is really what our work is. foundation, strategic plan is our foundation. But school improvement and school improvement plans is connected, and then our equity team goals are also connected. How do we make sure it's all just part of our work and putting that all together? And I think we're getting there, we're slowly getting there, and that's where we're at right now. And then we looked at the data, and then we got to the next phase for this year. Deb, if you can go to the next slide, the next two, I think. You can skip that.
I don't know my fingers.
Yeah, the other side, that's okay, that happens, right? And you can skip I'm not gonna go through our mission guides, because I believe everyone has known them, but go to, we have our anti-racist school, if I wanna go to the part about this piece. With right there, where we learned much when we looked at all the data, when we kept presenting to the board, was this huge problem of practice that we were looking at. Where every time we presented about special education data, we were noticing that our Latino students were overrepresented. When we're looking at discipline data, our Black students were overrepresented. When we're looking at our iReady data, our Black and Latino students were overrepresented, and the list goes on and on and on. So which is why we decided to take this targeted support, a targeted stretch, and making sure our school improvement plans, also each school, not that they just copy this, but they look at their own data and say, oh, who is being not served in our discipline practices? Who is not being served in academics or math, reading, and science? Who is not being served, and so forth. So they take a more targeted approach so that they can streamline their goals. We heard Showalter share that one example was they really decided to hone in on language arts and the 8th graders, right, based on information that they had. And then we saw them have success. So I think having that approach, and then our job is to figure out, once we do that, then how we take that information, that learning, and scale it back. And we heard Showalter say, so we learned this was successful here in our 8th grade for language arts. Now we're taking that approach and we're working with our science, we're working with our math, we're working with our other grade levels. And so that is the plan. So I just want to share that targeted universalism is a strategy. And but it's not saying that everyone else is ignored. Everyone has goals. We have goals for high school, middle school, elementary school. We have goals for all of our students, but we're saying we're going to take a targeted look at our district-wide data. So the strategic plan is our district-wide data. Who's being underserved? How do we target services, supports for them, wrap around them differently? And then our schools are going to be doing the same thing. So that was the learning that we took from last year, and we're taking that learning to applying it this year. And then with that, then going to the next page, we, based on that, we did make the changes to this, and we made the changes based on some of the goals. I do want to stop there because these PowerPoints which you have access to are all reflected in the PDF plan that will come to you and reflected in this. But one of the things we talked about, and this is why we need to have this conversation, because we're really going to talk about making this Tukwila, right? We talked last session about growth and performance versus growth. And so I just think, Director Larson and I talked about that, and we wanted to make sure that the board has a conversation around that, because what we're talking about is changing a major SMART goal, SMART goal. And if we do that and change out the performance goal for academic growth and change it to a growth goal, then a student performance growth goal, then we have to have a board discussion, talk about the why, and then also decide how we're gonna move that forward. So I think there's a motion that has to be made at least to add those changes I want to make sure everyone's in agreement, everyone understands. And then I'm gonna, on that level, is that okay, pass this to you at that point?
Okay, yeah, I guess I just have to, you said the old one had no goals for high school, that's actually.
Well, that was not the one I adopted, the one way before that.
Okay,
The old version that everyone said, we've never seen this before in our life.
okay.
Yeah, that one had no high school goals. This one does, but that one did not.
So, yeah, we talked about, at the last meeting with Showalter, this idea of using growth goals as opposed to proficiency goals. And so later in this meeting and the action item, we're going to have the plan is up for strategic plan is up for approval, and just to tell you, my intent is to, and I'll explain why here, but is to motion to postpone that to, so that we can change the relevant proficiency goals into growth goals. And so hopefully we can have a discussion about that now, so we don't have to have the discussion during that when we're all ready to go home. So I don't know, Deb, can you bring up that one little attachment that I gave you earlier today? So I have some proposals for how to do growth goals. But first of all, just to background is, why would we want to do growth goals as opposed to proficiency goals? And, you know, the first reason is, so, you know, we know that about half of our students are 2 or more grade levels behind. And to get to proficiency, it's going to take, it's not going to be 1 year. It's going to take 2 to 3 years typically to get. I mean, some students maybe if they really jump fast, but for the most part, it's going to take that 2 or 3 years. And so if all we're looking at is kind of proficiency, you know, all the things that we're doing now related to new standards and the new teaching approaches that we heard about at Schulter, we probably won't see much for like 2 or 3 years typically, but we want feedback quicker than that. I mean, we want to know if stuff is working quicker than that. And the beauty of growth is no matter where they start, within a year, you can see it in the growth data if it's going in the right direction, as we saw with the Showalter data. You know, they had really good results in their growth data using this student growth percentiles that the state keeps. And so that allows us then to adjust quickly. If something's not working, you know, we'll know it quicker than having to wait 2 or 3 years and, oh, proficiency isn't going, gee, that didn't work, let's start over again. So that's one of the biggest beauty of growth goals, is that you can get feedback quicker and respond quicker to what's going on. The other part of that too is we can not only, if it's not working, make adjustments quicker, but we can celebrate sooner. So, and that's a big issue for like the morale of staff and students. I mean, we want to be able, if things are starting to go in the right direction, they may have not got proficiency yet, but if they're moving in the right direction, we want to, you know, get on that and celebrate that as they're moving there. So it's, you know, the idea of growth also, it aligns, if you've read our collective bargaining agreements, it's a lot about the teachers should be evaluated on growth, and there's a whole lot of growth. It's not just academic growth, which is what I'm kind of talking about here, but it's all growth measures. It's multiple measures of growth, but this is one of them. The other thing I want to address was, you know, there's some people might think, well, if you go away from proficiency, you're lowering the standard for what we expect of our students. And that's not true, because if you're growing students, as I always say, you will get to proficiency. And I've seen that in districts after districts, you know, and one of the examples I always cite is the Rainier Prep Charter School. They have fantastic growth rates, and they've been doing it for a number of years. And so they also have fantastic proficiency rates. So it comes right with that. Also, I would say, yeah, just so everybody knows, Dr. Pedrosa likes this. She said she's in support of this. We heard from our principal at Showalter that he thinks that's the appropriate measure we should be using. So I think, and you know, the beauty of some, I've listed some of the, basically we're proposing to just change a couple of the academic goals, which are on, I think, the current document,
It's a
page 6. Yeah, page 6.
So make it, this is a motion you're making.
No, I will make the motion
Okay.
later.
Okay.
This is just a discussion
So
time.
we're ready.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
so, and then we can have a discussion, yeah, I can ask a question, or you can ask questions and whatever. Then I'll make the motion later, which will be, yeah, simpler. And then, let's see, the other one is on page 10 around, because the other academic one we have is around WIDA, that is the test for NLL students, to change that to student growth goal as opposed to a proficiency goal. And So, oops, wait a minute.
I know, I was just looking.
Okay, so, this, we don't have to, take this exact wording, this is a suggestion for them. My motion will be to change these goals from proficiency to growth goals, and, we can work out the details of how this is just. Right, this kind of format, which I think addresses something that, Director Simpson, if I've heard you correctly over time, you want to see it just kind of what, here's where we are, here's the goal, and then we can check to see at the end of the year. And so, the other nice thing about these, growth goals, for example, the first one there and I, kept it consistent with the focus on Hispanic, Latino, Black students, right down the line. And then, we can actually, compete with, for example, Mercer Island on this one. We're never going to get the proficiency that Mercer Island gets because of all the money that's involved in the society and so forth, but for those students. But, for instance, I looked at Mercer Island has a growth SGP of 56, ours is at 48. We can actually grow that number. And because we've done it in the last few years, we could actually catch up to them in growth, which would be, a nice selling point for our district. So, anyway, that's, and the other thing about all these, it doesn't require any work for the staff because the state cranks out all these numbers for us. So there's no additional staff work on this one. Other than, iReady, but iReady also cranks out, that's part of our, internal process. And, I actually kind of looked up to see the relationship between the state SGPs and the iReady work. It turns out that last year, Showalter had a very large, I think 60% increase in their iReady students hitting those stretch goals. And it didn't reflect much in their proficiency. Their proficiency hardly moved. But that's the example of exactly what I'm saying is, if they keep that proficiency rate up, their the growth rate's up, their proficiency will turn. And so we'll be able to get the results. So anyway, I just want to explain that. And if there's questions or any people who are dubious about this, we can discuss it now. So hopefully when the vote, like I say, my motion is going to be to simply postpone this approval for this till the next session so that they can go in and change these three areas where there's proficiency goals and change those into growth goals.
I have no compunction with this. That sounds like a great direction to go, and sounds like superintendent's in alignment. And I look forward to seeing what it would look like before we vote on it.
Okay.
Here we see, Joe.
You too.
Yeah, students.
I don't know, do you guys kind of get the concept, the idea of student growth? In other words, okay, you are where you are in proficiency of whether you pass a test or not. And then the question is, if we measure how much you grow during the year, that's the important thing. We have a lot of students that are, below grade level, but the important thing is to get them growing. If they're growing, then that's the important thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can talk more too, since we have time, we can talk more. I was talking to Naomi about Director Berto, Director Berto, about bringing some of this information to the superintendent advisory meeting to kind of unpack this a little bit more as you guys are now looking at academic policy. And so I think this will be a great topic for you guys to discuss, because I would like your feedback for if there's future, especially for getting your feedback on this.
And of course, recommending that, these are just the academics. We also have a whole lot of metrics that are not academic or around the soft skills and how students feel and belonging and all that. And all that still stays there.
Yeah, it was like in the future, and I think it's fine for right now because that's the assessment that we're using, but in the future, I'd like to figure out other ways to measure belongingness and connection and all the other things that we're measuring in there. But I think but that's okay. I think I'm in total support of this. I think it actually aligns better or more closely with our approach around targeted universalism. I also think it really like plays into and puts the emphasis on like a strength-based approach rather than a deficit, right? So I'm, yeah, fully in support.
I guess clarify for me then, how does this change for the teachers, you know what I mean, as far as their performance, you know, how is that looked at? And then also for the students, if we're doing, you know, this type of growth versus the state, you know what I mean, I'm a little confused if you can just kind of clarify.
I see it a little bit, and obviously you can probably speak to like the data piece of it, but I see it as like creating a goal to reflect what we heard Showalter was doing, right? With kind of more of these informal assessments, getting really concrete understanding of like where students are at and scaffolding the learning up to ideally the, you know, finished product, but giving students more kind of the option also, like choice over kind of their own engagement. But I feel like it just kind of reinforces and puts.
Well, I can address the teacher evaluation and the principal evaluation. There is a student growth component that they have to make a goal at the beginning of the year, and it has to be tracked throughout the year. And it's part of their summative evaluation, and it's all based on student growth. So it does align with the teacher and the principal evaluation on that piece. And then in terms of growth, what we're doing, for example, and iReady is one example, but one of the biggest changes for students and one of the biggest assets for students is that they actually are in charge of identifying strengths and challenges and making their goals. So that's part of it. We present the data for iReady, like the stretch goals. The students it's not just a computer spitting out saying, this is good. They actually work with the students and the teachers to say, okay, this is where you are. This is where we need to stretch you. Stretch means, for example, for example, there are students, for example, some of our students are 2 years behind. It's not enough for them just to have 1 year. It's not enough in certain areas. And also we have to look at them differently because they might be doing really well in mathematics, for example, but maybe the only area that they really need to work on is maybe their understanding of the number concepts or something like that. So it's basically saying, this is what I'm good at, and this is where I need to keep pushing myself to grow a little bit more, right? And the students should be part of that process and in talking about where their skills at, where they're working at, what they're working towards, language development, all of that. It's all to all of us as human beings, right? We want to be in charge of our own destiny and our own growth and learning. So it's aligned to, there's a lot of research around that. To be honest, when there is a focus, especially I think I've never have served communities that have high poverty and high MLL and high. And I will say that when you focus a lot on performance as the one indicator, it does become deflating for communities. When you focus on growth and you see the growth in the students, it is exciting. So I'll give an example. Last year, I'll give a really good concrete example. Last year, we brought all the principals together because we had brought the iReady folks to come and talk through the data and look at the data. And of course, the principals looked automatically at performance, right? They went there. That's how we're trained. But when I looked at the data, I saw that there was this student who at Showalter who actually in reading came in, I can't remember what it was, but they jumped up 3 years in 1 year. They jumped up 3 years in language arts. They still were behind grade level. That's huge. I've never jumped up 3 years in my life. And I remember telling the principal, look at that one kiddo, right? So yes, and so unfortunately, if we judge on performance, that student's gonna feel deflated because they didn't meet that mark. They were 4 or 5 years behind, but they grew 3 years in 1 year. That's incredible. And that's actually a testimony to our teachers, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what the difference between growth and performance, especially for some of our kids who are behind, it forces them to kind of like think about really be more finite about where I need to be pushing myself, right? And actually the kids who really do an amazing job, you can see it grow. Unfortunately, that performance part is always like that little line, but they will get there. They may not get there this year. So here's a child who increased 3 years in 1 year. they're still a year and a half behind. But guess what? If they put that same effort in 2 years, 3 years, they will be caught up, right? So that's the beauty of growth. So like Director Larson was saying, it does take longer to have them reach that, but it's amazing when, and that's what we need to celebrate, not this piece, because then that's gonna be deflating to students and teachers, because teachers are doing incredible things. It just is not always reflective in the data. The data tells you the story they want to tell you. We want the story that shows all the amazingness that our teachers and students are doing, so. And then just last thing, I just want to make sure, because you asked the question about history. Do you need more history than that for information about how?
I guess I'm just trying to, I appreciate your story, you know, that you're telling me here. I'm just trying to measure. And I like the feel good of, you know, making this, I'm just trying to prepare,
Yeah.
you know, because our goal as an institution is to prepare them to leave these walls, right? And so I just want to find a balance, and I'm trying to understand, you know, what that is, what the balance is there. And I'm trying to gather the benefit what I'm hearing right now, the benefit, what I've kind of read about is that, yes, we're celebrating the successes along the way, right? But are we losing the sight of the bar that we need to have our scholars there? And then how, if we're not, which I see Larson saying no, how are we bridging that? You know what I mean? Here is what I'm wondering, to make sure that, I agree with you, you know, that we need to celebrate them, but how are we still keeping the bar set for our scholars? Because once they leave here, y'all, it's a bad world out there. You know what I mean? And it's tough. And if you're reading, you know, I heard some good things, and I'm gonna use this as, it's my one example is, if we're reading comic books, you know what I mean? And that's as high as we got, it's gonna be tough to go out into the world and, you know, try to do college and do other things. There's expectations out there that are beyond these walls. So I just wanna make sure that when we're making motions and we're changing whole districts' ideas here and thoughts, that we're still having that goal and bar in sight. Yes, celebrating successes, I can see that.
But it's a matter of, Carly was saying, you know, as far as the comment, I mean, there's different ways to get to the end goal. And so, you know, it's good to have different options to get to that end goal. And as long as you're growing, I mean, if you're growing, you will get there. There's no question about that, if you keep growing at that rate. So that's the, you know, the marker, growing, you will get to the bar.
And I think there's so much to be said too about how a learner feels about themselves as a learner post high school, right? Because if they, you know, are one of our scholars who rarely meet their proficiency marker, like that is gonna feel a certain way about my belief in myself. And then I'm gonna carry that with me for a long time. So I think that's a really important piece of like, just sense of self. Then at the end of the day, can like, because if you have this idea of yourself that you can continue to learn, and growth is the important part, then even if you graduate high school reading mostly comic books, you're gonna know that you can continue to grow and excel, even into college.
And if you listen to the teachers, they're talking about, okay, they may use one mode to kind of get there, but they don't stop pushing them. They keep pushing them, and then maybe it goes into another mode, and you know.
Well-
And I don't know, I was gonna say that when I was watching the faces of the teachers last session, we were talking about growth. I mean, there was a lot of big nodding of heads, and yes, that's the way we wanna do it.
And so just one caveat to keep if you want to keep we get the performance data anyway, right? We do get it every year. It doesn't matter. We get it every year from OSPI. So if that's what you want reported, you could make a motion to have both there. If you wanted to have the SPGP and the performance goal, that could be a motion that you could have them both. I'm just saying to understand how.
I'm not trying to make more work for people. What I'm trying to do is grasp the idea of the growth measure on an individual student, 30 students in a class or whatever, you know, it is individually, the growth of one student at 5%, the other student at 50%, you know, we're still categorizing here, you know, so I'm just trying to understand what I wanna make sure, this is, I guess, here's my worry, that we're gonna make it more obscure, you know, for it, so that, yes, I agree, students are gonna get the growth and they're moving forward. But I wanna make sure they're, and I apologize for the lack of terms I'm saying.
No, that's
But the best word I can think is the reality of where they are sitting currently. And then when they go to graduate and go out into face the job market and do things compared to what we're cultivating, right? I do respect that the success, you're gonna build off of that, I get that. But when they leave here, the reality is this, and I wanna make sure that we're focusing it, you know what I mean? And that we're not losing that as a district wide, you know, for us. So that's what I wanna be real careful.
This doesn't change requirements to graduate, right? And my understanding is that this probably wouldn't change the instruction that students are, that teachers are doing in the classroom. This would just shift how we're monitoring success, right, and improvement of what teachers are already doing, and probably would also like impact continued interventions. Like, for me, it feels like a way to measure the things that we are really trying to systematize right now. But it doesn't change like the high expectation. And maybe that could be more clear too, that like, here's what we expect and we strive that every student in our district walks away with. And here's the goal that we believe over time is going to help them get there.
Yeah, because it's focusing on getting them there, you know, as quickly as possible. The faster we can grow them, the faster they'll get to where they want to be.
I'm just gonna add,
And also, well,
it's anecdotal in nature. What do you guys have on your wall of fame over here? A student that was not an A student. I don't even know that he was a B student.
Well-
But when he got out, he moved through the world because he knows how to connect with people, grow, learn quickly what he had to learn, and he ended up over in Washington DC, made a bunch of connections and did really well and prospered.
I get that, but I
Recognized
can,
for that, so it's not always the.
I can also point to a student that's in the graveyard right now that didn't do well in school, didn't make it out there and chose a different life. You know what I mean? So I can't take the best example and say that that's how it's gonna work out. I mean, I hope for that,
But was
but
your,
it's not the best example.
was your person caught up in school excited about his growth? Or feeling put off because he wasn't proficient
Well,
being compared
I'd
to
love
others?
to ask him that. I don't know.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm just saying, so I just wanna be very careful when we do a school and a whole policy change here and a look at, because I also, my other fear, you know what I mean, and I'll be super honest with you guys, is if I'm a teacher, you know, and I'm not saying that we are, but it'd be easier, it seems like it'd be easier to show some growth at different areas at a 5% or something like this. That's an easier mark to meet, you know what I mean, for to do it. So I also wanna be careful about, I don't wanna overmanage people, you know what I mean? So these things are put in place and they're set up this way so we don't have to micromanage and overmanage people. But when we're starting to do this growth system, it's easier for me to prove some growth versus where I'm hoping, or this student could have really achieved with some different push. Because I'm just, some students are gonna do really well at this and some are not, and I agree that's the way it is now. I'm not saying that it's a fix either way. But if we're gonna do a whole, you know, took all the students or policy, I wanna kind of think this a little more on both sides. Or at least here, I gotta better understand. I mean, I'm probably outvoted here, but I better understand to get my vote, you know what I mean, for this to move your motion, to better understand that this has been well thought through, that this is where, that this is, I hear some of the good ideas, but that is really what's gonna be best for our students and for our staff.
I mean, I think I've seen it in enough other schools that, you know, if you get high growth and you do it for a few years, proficiency goes up.
I think something else, and this doesn't really necessarily fully answer your inquiry or speak to it, but we've been doing it this other way for so long, and we're not really getting where we wanna go. And so, I guess like, what would be the, harm, I guess, because we're not, again, like, there are students that are just continuing to fall further and further behind because we're, again, how they feel about themselves as learners, the lack of real, potential supports based on, yeah, I don't know, so, but again, we've been doing it with these goals that are focused on proficiency. And it's not really super, we're not seeing significant changes in the data that we look at. We certainly haven't from when I've been here. So I guess like, what harm would it be to try a different approach, knowing that like these are goals for a year, right?
Good question. To do both, we have all the data anyway.
Yeah,
Just another page.
So,
Sure, I'll just do both. That way he'll be happy and we're delivering it. So hybrid might be the answer.
I think I can
So we
appreciate
see it compared.
what President Hoover said. I definitely get where you're at, and if we're at a 1-year goal, and you gotta think out of the box, you're definitely gonna need to do something different, right? Because the same old drum doesn't always work. And I get that. I just wanna be really careful moving forward when we change policy like this on there, that everything, everything is set to that standard that's gonna make the students successful at the end, that what is gonna be required of them when they leave these walls, right? So if I'm open, if this is like a 1 year, we're gonna relook at this and see how it goes, but it seems like what I'm hearing Director Larson say, it takes a couple years for this to turn around and show, you know what I mean?
no.
To see them, you said it takes a couple of years for, what I heard you say,
Yeah.
was it takes a couple of years for these to change in order for us to.
Well, the proficiency should change. The growth you can see right away. I mean, we saw with the Showalter folks, their new approach didn't produce much in proficiency change, but it produced a lot of growth change, which tells me that within a couple, 3 years, if they continue that up, the proficiency will change as well.
Because they're engaged.
So, this is I'm glad we brought this as a motion, because I think there's an important conversation to have, because you're right. I do not feel that if we make a change like this, we have to have a whole board discussing it and understanding it and making sure. So, I think it sounds like we need more work anyway, regardless. So, that's the end of my presentation.
So does all.
My presentation, I do want to add, I'm just going to add, something that, we've been talking, I'll just add one thing to my presentation is, I've been meeting with, Garrett Kishner. So those of you who don't know, he's the intern, from, my intern for the superintendent intern this year. And, Garrett, actually, we just talked about student growth because that's going to be his dissertation probably, is talking about student growth. And so I want to send you just a little quote, a resource that he actually sent to Director Larson, but Adam Grant's new book titled Hidden Potential speaks to the value of identifying how a person has grown and overcome challenges in hiring, for example. One quote, the most valuable indicator of future potential is not past performance, it's recent progress. The people who exceed expectations tomorrow are the ones who improve the most yesterday. Getting better shows the drive and dexterity to learn. So that's just a quote that he put. So it sounds like we have more discussion to have. I think the question for us then is, it sounds to me that we can, so what I don't want to add too many more goals. So that's one thing I just want to share. I don't want to, this is a pretty hefty document. But it sounds to me that there's a need for both. And we haven't heard from Director Proctor is on lines. We haven't really heard from him. So I don't probably, when it comes to the motion, he'll listen in. It could be that, because we have language around iReady that we don't have any metrics. It could be, we could add at least just SGP into that performance goal for this year. And then maybe really have some data to kind of look at so we can have more conversation. That's something we could do. I just want to put it out there that so that could come up for the motion later on, but I just wanted to share that I thought that this was really important. It is good discussion because I'll be honest, I hear what you're saying, because to be honest, all of the districts around it, especially the low poverty districts, use performance measures.
Of course they do.
Because performance measures are directly tied to poverty. If you look at numbers, you did a presentation on Saturday. If you lined up every district in the state of Washington and you looked at their performance along with poverty line, it's a correlation, boom, 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 correlation. Growth, there's no poverty aligned to that. So that's the big difference on that. Growth, for example, our growth measures are very close to Mercer Islands, for example, because of the work that they're doing. So I'm just sharing that, that's an example of that. And I know that because I've actually been in a high poverty district, and I've been at, a high poverty school, and I've been in a low poverty school. So I know the difference between that. And when I actually sat down, when I was sitting with all the high school principals that I worked with one point, I actually was curious myself, and I lined it all up, and guess what? Boom, 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 boom. I think there was just 2 schools that were like, flipped one year. So I just think that's a big conversation to have, because poverty is a huge indicator, but we're trying to say that if we focus on growth, then we can remove that we can move that and say that everyone has the potential to exceed their learning. It may not take 1 year, it may take 2 years for some students, or 3 years, but they'll get there, and we have to keep putting that in front of them. So performance does matter, because they have to take the tests and on, and we get those reports. So the question I have for later, so I'm gonna stop this presentation if that's okay. But I think when we come to since it sounds like we're gonna have to take this off with a motion and then sort of decide as a group what you wanna do. So think about that before we get to that, so we can proceed with the meeting. So I just wanna make sure that I brought this up to everybody, because this is how we as a system grow. We are growing as a district, and we're learning. And, but I wanna make sure that whatever my big focus is alignment. Teachers, principals have student growth goals, and I wanna make sure we're aligned. So, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about performative goals too. We can have them both too, if that's what this board decides what we wanna do. So I just wanna make sure that that could be put in there as well. So it could be an add-on instead of a replace. So that's what I would add versus, so think about that when we get to that point. So anyway, I just wanted to end that for you, so we can move on. Is that okay? Okay.
Sounds like this might need to be added to our sheet too, for just continued board discussion.
Give them 8 and 9.
I mean, probably our next meeting, because we need to get to the point where we can approve this strategic plan,
Absolutely.
so. Okay. Next is our questions only presentations, beginning with the monthly financial statement. We can just kind of lump this and the financial forecast together, if that's okay. I know it's just kind of like a very early projection, much can change, but 1.5 million is exciting.
It is exciting, so it is early, it is September, so, as the months progress and you learn new things, obviously that projection will get updated, each and every month, so.
And I do want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So it sounds like at the end of 2025 of this, or 24 school year, we will be back to a balanced, but
Very close, yes.
Yeah, very close.
So barring any surprises, like we had last year, with especially, if we have an unforeseen like event, emergency, or knocking on wood, but that doesn't happen. But, that could increase some costs that we wouldn't anticipate, but we're monitoring very closely.
Are we talking about facilities, or are we talking about unpaid? Cause I remember last year was unpaid bills, kind of some things that we should have had.
Facilities, if we have a weather event again, something that's out of our control, so that would be my biggest worry. We are caught up on those.
Yeah, I was.
I mean, every once in a while we'll have a bill pop in, but it's not like it was.
Yeah, we're not having anything in everyone's turning their stuff in on time, and we're good on that. So the facilities, I'm assuming, or I'm sure we're doubling our efforts with our weathering and whatnot in our facilities and making sure that that's going to
Things like
be,
that.
yeah.
Yes.
Super, because this is big. I think this is really big for the district. I think
Mhm.
it's big for what it looks like for next year, for, both staff and everything. So I'm just really hoping that we're
Yeah.
definitely doing.
And as I pointed out in the August financials, just so that you're all aware, a lot of what I was able to do. So our ESSER funding is really what saved us. So we had a really big underspend in both of the ESSER grants that had the two big ESSER grants that we had. It's really unusual. I've never had this in the experience in all the years that I've worked in K-12 education. This was a multi-year grant, which meant that the period of availability, what they call the period of availability, generally runs one fiscal year. This one was 3. I was able to go back into previous fiscal years, so I went all the way back to 2021. I was geared up to go back all the way to March of 2020 when this grant first began, but I identified expenditures from those previous fiscal years that I was able to move over and claim.
Nice.
And we were able to maximize both of those grants. So that is really what saved and got us to our financial position in August.
It's really great that you're able to do that, to go back to
Yes.
close budget cycles and make those
Yeah,
adjustments.
we probably won't ever be able to do that.
No.
With the grant, so.
Was it because of our binding conditions or just
No.
because of the grant?
The type of grant that
Okay.
it was, so our normal grants, as I call them normal grants, it's generally September through August or October through September, just based on the cycle of the grant, so.
Let me rephrase, I said 24, 25. Actually, so you're showing at the end of 23, 24, in other words, the end of the school year that we just finished, the fund balance is 0.
It's $108, well,
Essentially.
total fund balance is $180,000. We have
Yeah.
required set asides,
Yeah.
because again, I
Puts it a
focused
little
my
low.
efforts on ESSER. So unfortunately, we had some underspending of that I was required, so I
Right.
understand I'm required to set aside.
Yeah, but it's essentially, essentially 0 in
Mhm.
comparison, and our finding conditions said we didn't have to be to 0 till a year from now. So we're essentially 1 year ahead,
Correct.
which
We
is.
exceeded our metrics, thank you very much.
Very well.
Seriously.
And if I'm understanding, then what we have left is to get our fund balance back up to 6, the finding condition says 4%, but our policy says 6%, so we want to get that 6%, and then we have to pay back the 4 million
Yeah, we're not out of the woods yet.
the capital project, so we're still sitting, and I think, what did you say over this next year? Well, so the capital projects thing, we're gonna pay it back, but then we're gonna borrow some more.
Yeah, so
But the net is, we're gonna have maybe $1.5 million less.
yes,
Yeah, okay, so
Yes.
that's gonna go down, projected at this
Right.
point, subject to all this.
yes.
That'll go down to maybe 1.5, and then, so, we'd be in really nice, we still have a lot of spending to cut, but we're well ahead of what we are required to do, so that's great.
Yes. Also, just so you're aware, I put in a new sheet for the financial report so that you're all aware. This is something I'm going to include on page 11 in the August financial report on page 11. It's the combined balance sheet. This is a report or a page that has been missing. It's missing in quite a few school districts, but it gives you a snapshot, especially if you want to look at the cash balance and where we are. So I think it's a very important piece of information, just so that you see what that cash looks like for the district. I think that if this would have been provided to you in previous fiscal years, you probably would have been having some aha moments a lot sooner, because you would have seen cash starting to really decline as well. Again, the cash right now for general fund in August looks a little bit high, but if you look down, you see in the liability section, we have an interfund loan payable, and that's where that jumps out, that $4 million. So, this is something that I'm starting to, incorporate into the monthly financial report. This will be included, so that you're just aware of, what's going on our balance sheet side as well.
I think I'm on the right page, but when you start saying, talking about August, I don't know where you're looking.
Page 11.
That is about August, the whole.
Oh, the whole page.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay,
page is August. So
my bad.
it's for each of the funds, so I put all
Oh,
of
I
the
see.
funds
As
on
of
one page.
That's
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
The tricky part is remembering, because it's not just necessarily what the fund balance is, but it's what changed from the last, I mean, like you were saying, if it goes down really
Mhm.
fast, which you'd have to go back to the previous months to look at this. I don't
Yes.
know, as I mentioned, I attended a couple of sessions from some of your previous.
Right.
colleagues.
And I have sent you some information that
Yeah.
that I did when I was
Yeah,
at Seattle's public
yeah,
schools.
yeah.
So there's some additional information that
right.
once you have a chance to look
Right,
at,
yeah.
we can incorporate more information into this financial report.
Yeah, the other one that I found was really interesting, we've never seen before is the graph of, student growth or student count versus staff count.
Mhm.
Which for us would have been really interesting to have seen, because I think we grew way out of proportion to what our students, and that's a big clue right there that, considering 85% of our staff, that's things are out of whack. So I was interested in the September report. It looks to me like we actually got some bump up in students from, let's see, so the head count, this is September's report, but it's the November,
Yes.
and compared to October there was significant 2592 in October, which is the official count for the bad news about this is that, my understanding, our funding, proportionate funding is based on that October number. And so now we had a big jump up in November. We won't see that money until,
Right.
we'll see it eventually, but not till January probably.
Right, so January, actually, they fund us based on budget, so whatever
Oh.
we budgeted in
Oh.
95, so I budgeted at 2,620 FTE.
Yeah,
So that's what I budgeted, that's how we're currently funded.
Okay.
In January, they will start making those adjustments. So right now, the FTE, and you don't see it in the September report, unfortunately, but the FTE is under the 2,620. I think we're at average annual FTE is about 2,596. So no, strike that. Yes, 2,596. So if there was no additional growth, over the next few months, that we would start seeing adjustments down. And so when I did the projection for September, I adjusted the revenues down as a result of some of those enrollments. So basically, September was low, October grew a little bit, November was even higher.
Yeah.
And so, but we're not at that average annual FTE when we take those 3 months. to
looking at this report, the average.
Average.
Okay, the average,
Yes.
that's what I'm missing,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, right, but I'm curious about this, just the increase from, September to November, not the averaging, but the increase is significant.
Yeah,
And I'm
we
just
saw
curious.
some growth. I know that at the high school, they had some students that they had on a waiting list to come in out of district transfers. They were trying to see what enrollment was looking
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
And so then
Okay.
we said, oh yeah, please let them in. So
Yeah.
so some of that took place. I know that there were some students that I think were just late comers at the elementary level. So we started seeing some growth, especially at Thorndike, we're starting to see some growth. That's where they had some really low enrollment numbers, and so now we're starting to see them grow a little bit. Now, whether that trend continues,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it might flatten out. I think we're in a situation where we were last year with the asylum seekers, and we continue to see this massive growth month over month. So I think it will plateau here.
Okay.
In the coming months.
What I'm worried about is, when Trump comes in at the first of the year, he'll shut down the border.
I know.
And then what impact, it's hard to say what impact that will have on us. or if they start trying to
Mhm.
deport people.
Right.
Yeah, that gets a little
Yeah.
scary, which means that we're gonna have to be fairly conservative,
Next year.
probably more conservative than, yeah. okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been having those conversations. We're trying to think through practicality, watch very closely and monitor, and then we'll probably have to be conservative, on the conservative side, for next year. So we hope that, when we start doing our planning, and that's something we'll have to talk about in the budget advisory committee as well, when we make recommendations, because we'll have to talk about some of those things, those changes.
But we're ahead of plan, so that's good.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Good job, thank you.
Okay. Next is the highly capable and gifted advanced coursework. Questions on the presentation? Just naming this, it is 9:04. We've got quite a bit of agenda left to go. So,
Are you not feeling highly capable right now?
I'm not feeling highly capable. And my growth is like way down.
My proficiency is. Tell you that.
I'm happy, so.
So my question on this one, and this has been, we talk about this kind of every year, is how do we, I'm looking at the elementary school, gaps between Black students, 11% or their high cap and 23% of the population, and Latinx is a little not quite so correct, but the constant question is how do we address, leveling that out? And we never seem to figure out. I mean, we've been talking about this, it seems like for 16 years I've been here, we've never figured out how to do that. And so that's what to some degree, this honors gifted thing is a pipeline. I mean, if you to have disproportionality in elementary school, then it's probably gonna just, float up, although it is interesting by the time we get to Foster, it's kind of less, it's closed a little bit, which I guess says something good for Foster, I guess, but I just, I don't know that I've ever heard us kind of figure out, are there some districts that have figured out how to close that gap, and, what are they doing, and how can we do what some of they're doing? Because, it's just kind of an open-ended ongoing question. I don't know, maybe you can do some research on that or not, but because we haven't been able to figure this out, how people are.
So just a couple of quick pieces to add. Dr. Jocelyn Proctor, Director of PK-12 Education and College Readiness. First of all, it's a new report, so appreciate the opportunity to try to create this snapshot for you all. And we're gonna be, it's getting late, so I'm just trying to stay focused. I think overarchingly with the disproportionality, it's, it's not a great thing to see that, but I think with us doing the testing, as opposed to a high amount of parent referrals and outside testing and, people lining up and saying, my kid is gifted, and so this is what they need. We're trying to rest a level of playing field in that way. We certainly allow for parent referral in that process, but that's not the driving factor in how our services are provided. I think the disproportionality, and I'm just making conjecture, lines up with just the wide amount of disparities our students are, experiencing on a regular basis, but that's hard to say. But I think we're doing a pretty good job with, what we've got with the kind of revamping that's happened over the last few years. And certainly as we get our legs under ourselves a little more, we can compare and contrast with similar people for other districts around us. If that is a motion that the board makes for us to do. But this is a little bit of what we've got right now. And then the high school piece really just speaks to student choice at the high school level. Parents and tests tend to guide what an elementary student does. And the more autonomous the student becomes on the middle school and high school level, they can challenge themselves beyond what the test tells them. And so I think that's why we see that.
And I think they are, high school is gonna default the English language or honors English to everybody that comes in, so it'll be interesting to see. I know, I think other Bishop Federal has been doing that for a while, and so,
Yeah, and this is our first year, so.
So we'll be tracking how that looks
yeah.
after the year's over so that we can, and we can do a mid-year pulse on it, but just see how that worked out for the year, if we get to expand it or not, and how much.
Where does this data get pulled from? It's
Great.
Skyward.
Yeah, I believe Skyward, our data analyst pulls, this for us.
Oh,
They don't ask
what was the
those
question?
Where does it get pulled
super
from?
discrete
Yeah, I'm sure it's
questions.
Skyward, yeah.
Yeah,
And then Skyward. In Skyward, we only have the male, female, other option.
I don't believe so. I believe we have the other option, but what you're noticing is that this group sample size is very small.
Yeah.
Very, very
that-
small, so
yeah.
we can't disaggregate any other, without.
Statistically, we have many more genderqueer and expansive students than that. And that's not my issue,
Hmm.
because I hear that every time.
Yeah.
But my issue is male, female, and other. We need to start distinguishing besides the word other. Yeah,
Apologies, we can update
that's
that.
okay. Yeah, we gotta do better. We have to create the environment where young people feel comfortable enough to come out, right? If we're seeing 0% of our population identifying as something besides male and female, we're not getting good data. We're not getting accurate data. Because again, statistically, that's just not true.
Want to take it?
Thanks. Cool, anything else? All right, thank you. Next is the iReady data for 23-24.
And Scott's not here,
Yeah.
so he's actually with family. So I am gonna attempt to answer as much as I can, if there's any questions.
So I did get the data about the students that are 2 or more grade levels behind and how they're doing. The good news, it's interesting when I was comparing 23 to 24, which I can now do because I have a couple of it. FAU did really well in increasing the number of students that are 2 or more grade levels behind, that's getting stretch growth in math. So they increased it about 50%. And then, as we talked about, Showalter, not surprisingly, in English language, increased their score by about 60%, the number of the students. So, and the others were kind of a mix. So I would be interested to hear what went on at Cascade View in math. I mean, what these sports show is, to me, is always, what's working well. And then hopefully that can spread. I mean, we've already heard about the Showalter, and we want to spread that to all the grades and hopefully all around the school. But I'd be interested to know what they're doing in Cascade View and math, because that was a.
The one thing I do know that they did, and I would have to do a correlation,
Yeah.
but I know that when we did our learning labs last year in mathematics, so we did learning labs it was multilingual learning lab focus for K-8. The majority of the third, fourth and fifth grade teachers were from Cascade View.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's one
Yeah.
area. So I just note that because every time they were the majority that were there at that time. So, and they were really dedicated in that professional development, and I can.
That's right, I was there.
You were there when
Yeah.
they were really into it, and they were really trying to push their practice and thinking about how to support all learners in their classroom in mathematics instruction. So I do know that was one thing that they did. We had a little bit of scant participation, not all of the grade levels, but the majority of the teachers at Cascade View were in those sessions, so.
That's what I'd like to get data to find out, who's
Yeah.
doing really well, and then it's spread that around.
Yep.
I think that's all I had, thanks.
And I will say, for our instructional rounds, so just to let this board know, we're planning 3 instructional rounds days where we're gonna be visiting 3 of our schools. Where we're gonna invite board members actually to participate. And one of them is gonna be cascading, one of our principals is gonna have us, we're gonna work with that. The other is gonna be Showalter, and then we're gonna pick the third school, so we'll get to learn in real time what's happening and see. Because we've had lots of presentations, so we'll get to see it in real time and see some of the good work happening, so.
All right, y'all, home stretch. We are to the action items portion of our agenda. So we'll begin with action item A, which is approval of the human resources staffing report.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor of approval? Aye. Next is approval of the resolution number 5955, certification of the 2024 excess property taxes.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? And I see Director Proctor has raised his hand. Hold on, I'm gonna get you in there to unmute yourself. You can also be added as a panelist.
Any panelists?
No, he needs to be added as a panelist.
Where is he?
In the attendee list, one down.
Proctor.
There you go.
Keeping Christmas.
It's 9:15.
Tell me what.
All right, Director Proctor, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Is that you? My phone's right in front of me.
That is well learned.
Oh, okay.
Well, we can hear you, that's the question.
Yeah, you
Yes, I was just voting in the affirmative.
Oh, gotcha, right on, all right, cool. We should keep that, so you can vote. All right, so there are no questions or comments on resolution 955, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Next is the approval of the strategic plan for the 2025 through 2028.
So moved.
Okay.
So we need to second it, and then, yeah,
That's it.
Okay, second.
okay, and then discussion.
Okay, so I will move that we postpone the action on this item until the December meeting. I think we only have one meeting in December. In order to make the edits to include growth goals for the academic portions of this document.
That's a motion for amendment, seconded
Okay, so it's been seconded. Okay, all in favor?
of amendment.
Well, all in favor of postponing the vote to fix. Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
so.
Yep, you're right, suspends everything.
Yep.
Okay, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is approval of donation for the McKinney Bento.
So moved.
So moved.
Oh. Second.
Any questions, comments?
It's pretty cool.
Okay, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
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 Next is approval of the donation from Till.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yay. Next is the approval to retire policies.
So moved.
Second.
My one question is, should we approve the new policy before retiring the current policies?
That's a good question.
Or, I mean, as if there's a void in policy, I don't know what difference operationally that would make,
It's
really.
still in my contract, so I still want to do it.
Well, we know that 05, where are they?
So by 3.
Yeah, I think you're,
05 grade five.
I think you're right. We should,
They should probably keep it, yeah.
yeah,
So-
so I'll move that we postpone this one until such time as we have approved the 0100 replacement policy.
So we withdrew the first motion, and now we're putting a second one, is that what you're doing?
We did withdraw the first motion. He's now motioning to,
Okay, second.
okay. All in favor of the motion to postpone this vote until we approve policy
0100.
0100? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then lastly is the approval of the early learning and school calendars for 2024-25 school year.
So,
Second.
Questions, comments?
So I guess I just have to say a little bit about this because we're approving a change to the school year calendar in the middle of the school year. And, you know, it was because of the bargain that we had, and as a school board, we approved the bargaining agreement. And in the bargaining agreement, there was listed the change in the schedule. This is adding a bunch of more Wednesday early release days. And I know when I approved, I think when we approved the collective bargaining, I didn't understand that this was going to cause a significant or a change in the school calendar in the middle of the school year, which is something, you know, I mean, none of us have students in the district, but from a parent perspective, that's not a good thing to be doing, changing it in the middle of the school year like this. And this came up because I saw a post on social media, somebody saying, "Did you know that this school district?" And I said, "No, I didn't know." So this is kind of an after the fact thing. It's happened, so, you know, we don't really have any choice, but I just want to make sure that, you know, the school calendar is a big deal. And I want to make sure that if we ever do anything that's going to change the school calendar, especially in the middle of the year, which is hopefully not done very often at all, that we get clear communication to the board about here's the new calendar, here's what it's going to be, boom, boom, boom. So I just want to, say that, make sure that is done for future anytime in school, because school calendar is a big deal for everybody in the district.
It also makes you just question the timing of it all, like in the future, when we're in a bargaining year, would it be more beneficial to wait until we approve the bargaining agreement before we approve the school calendar? Probably. Okay.
Especially if that's gonna be one of the big things that
Yeah.
comes up. I mean, this is a huge change for families.
How many days does it affect?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
New ones.
Aaron, do you, I'm
Compared
sorry,
to the-
do you remember how many days is added? How many early learning days is added for families approximately? Isn't it 5 more?
It's 13.
Yeah.
I think it was 13.
Yeah, it's all your orange.
Yeah. it's
Outside of
13.
your purple there.
Okay. Okay.
I mean,
All right, all in favor of approval?
hi.
Aye. Okay. All right, this brings us to our second opportunity for public comment. If you're here in person and would like to offer any public comment, you're welcome to do so. The list I have. If you're online joining us and would like to offer any public comment, you can do so by raising your hand or typing your name in the chat, which should be available to you now. I'll give you just a minute to do that. Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Hopefully we're fumbling to find it, because we still have some work to do. So the board is going to now go into an executive session to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such considerations could cause a likelihood of decreased price for RCW 42.30.110C. So at this point, I'd like to invite everyone who is not on the board, and that unfortunately includes you two as well, to go ahead and exit the space. We will be in executive session, I don't know, can we say 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Great, we'll be in executive session for 15 minutes, and then we will return to adjourn our meeting.
Board where the fun.
While everyone does that.
You guys know your bells do ring.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Long night.
They're not,
I
the-
bet I did
they're
make
not,
the-
they're not the exact same tone, so if you ever get together, it can be a little fun.
You say, you say you can.
Yeah, I'll stay. I want to hear.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying.
We'll see you later. Thank you.
Oh, you said the board. too.
So,
I know. I know. Hey, guys, thank you so much. It was a long meeting tonight, so.
Recording stopped yet? or
Because you
we
missed
brought-
your student
the
board
recording
meeting, I
has
just wanted you to
stopped yet
make up for it
because
with this really long one with us. There you go.
Keith Proctor, right?
Here we keep Proctor.
Maybe.
Oh.
All right, it is now 10:12. We are back from our executive session and I'll accept a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Adjourn?
What?
Oh, I thought you said I'll take a motion.
I
Move to
did.
adjourn.
Okay.
What do you mean, what?
All right. All in favor?
Say hi.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.